Hey guys, this week we were planning on bringing you part one of our two-part series based on the Planet of the Apes franchise. While preparing the episode, it was brought to our attention that a lot of our Patreon episodes were not functioning as they should, and we realized that the podcast host we had been paying to upload our shows was not performing as advertised. So for the past week, we've been busy making the move to our new host, Spotify for Podcasters, which is free to use, easy to navigate, and offers us tons more features than our past provider. For instance, you can now access our Patreon through its own dedicated Spotify feed, a link to which you will find in this show's description above. You can still access our show on all podcast providers, actually more than before thanks to Spotify for Podcasters, and you can access our Patreon shows, which we painstakingly re-uploaded nearly 300 episodes, on the Patreon website or app. And there's a 7-day free trial available now, which you can cancel at any time. So now everything is fixed, everything is in order, and we are back on track to bringing you the simian flu pandemic and de-evolution theory part 1 this coming Wednesday. But for now, here's a look back at one of our early episodes, and the first I was particularly proud of at the time of release. Here's episode 7 and 8 is one long story, the Sawyer family and the legend of Leatherface. Enjoy. Warning. This podcast contains heavy spoilers for not just one movie, but entire franchises. We highly recommend going and watching these movies before listening to us as a companion piece that stitches all the timelines into one creepy, crime-ridden story. There will be no more spoiler warnings. We do not break character. After this, there is no turning back. You've been warned. Hit the music.
You are talking about the nonsensical ravings of a lunatic mind.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
It's alive! It's alive!
On the afternoon of August 18, 1973, 5 young people in a Volkswagen van ran out of gas on a farm road in South Texas. 4 of them were never seen again. The next morning, the one survivor, Sally Hardesty, was picked up on a roadside, blood-caked in screaming murder. Sally said she had broken out of a window in hell. The girl babbled a mad tale, a cannibal family in an isolated farmhouse, chainsawed fingers and bones, her brother, her friends hacked up for barbecue, chairs made of human skeletons. Then she sank into catatonia. Texas lawmen mounted a month-long manhunt, but upon locating the macabre farmhouse, they could find no killers and no victims. No facts, no crime. Officially on the record, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre never happened. But over the next 13 years, over and over again, reports of bizarre, grisly chainsaw mass murders persisted all across the state of Texas. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre had not stopped. It haunted Texas. It seemed to have no end. Hello and welcome to It's Alive podcast. This is a true crime, paranormal, interstellar podcast breaking down unbelievable stories that sound like they were ripped straight from the pages of a Hollywood script. I am your host, the man of many names, the outlaw Harley Ray, the bruiser Bronson, Dr. H.R. Smokenstein, THC, or you can just call me Josh for short. And with me as always is my very own scream queen, the perfect combination of beauty and brains, the gorgeous, the sexy Aimee Rose.
No joke for us today.
Huh?
No joke.
Well, this is a very serious matter we're going to discuss today.
Okay.
Can't be running around making jokes when there's cannibals involved.
Well, that's unusual for you.
Oh, I could tell you some funny shit. You heard about the ancient Mexican aliens?
They're little concrete statues.
Yeah, well, that's what they look like. They do look. If they were real, they'd freak me out because there's 2 things that I can't stand, right? That I would kind of be afraid of. A human that is that small, like that is like below my knee height, that can run around, that could like elfish, goblin-y kind of fucking thing. That will creep me out because they can get around quick and they can do damage.
Okay.
And big things that are bigger than me. I don't like
they're
things
definitely
that are
not bigger than you.
But like I don't know. Like if I saw a giraffe, I'd be a bit nervous of a giraffe because it's huge. Do you know what I mean? Elephants, for some reason, I get over. I think I've been around an elephant.
Is that because the proportions on an elephant look? Well, I suppose no.
I just generally don't like anything bigger than me. I remember as a kid, I used to like shit myself going into the cinema because the thought of all these big, huge actors on the screen in front of me scared the life
I
out
thought
of me.
you were going to say big, huge screen, but it was the pictures on the screen.
Oh yeah,
that scared you.
the idea of something, and I was always terrified that something would jump out at the screen. You know, they'd try and get one of those cheap scares in a horror movie where they try, like, especially when they got into the 3D mode and they started throwing stuff at the screen. I was always terrified they'd do that to me when I was in the cinema as a kid. I never did because I was never at a horror movie when I was a kid. But anyway, back to these little things. They creep me out. The look of them creep me out. But they're like your typical grey style alien. What we've been taught to think an alien looks like. But they're tiny.
Yeah.
And this guy, what's he saying? So, 2 alleged non-human alien corpses have been shown to Mexican politicians. The mummified specimens were displayed in glass cases as part of an official unveiling at Mexico's Congress in a hearing which has stirred excitement among UFO enthusiasts. Now, that sounds very official, doesn't it?
It does. But it was
From what I have
official,
heard,
so.
it is like basically like open mic night in Congress. Like you get, it's like, do you know when you see like the Americans having their kind of like their community kind of, you know, where there's politicians sitting up there and you get to walk up and ask your question to them and ask them what they're the council and shit like that. It's essentially what this was. Anyone could come in and say whatever the fuck they want.
So hang on, was it the government showed it, or where people came into this night and showed it?
They showed the government, yeah.
They showed the government, and the government showed the...
From what I can tell here, we'll have a look and we'll see. Politicians were told they were found in the city of Cusco, Peru, and were estimated to be about 1,000 years old. The Mexico City event was spearheaded by journalist and UFO researcher Aimee Rose, who testified under oath that almost a third of their DNA is unknown, and the specimens are not part of our terrestrial evolution, Mexican media reported. So he's claiming there's some DNA in there that ain't ours, ain't from this earth.
I think their heads are quite very Yoda shaped.
Yoda shaped?
No, as in the like the chin, under the chin.
Oh, yeah, okay, I can see that. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, I thought you were talking because it's really
with
long
ears
head, like.
And,
No.
But
I get to the chin area, yeah. The tiny little mouth kind of thing.
Yeah.
These specimens are not part of our evolutionary history on Earth, he said in a presentation to Mexican government officials and representatives from the US. They are not beings recovered from a UFO crash. Instead, they were found in diatom algae mines and subsequently became fossilized. Could you be fossilized that quick in 1,000 years?
See, now that they've said mines, my thing is you can't be fossilized that quick, but if you were in a cave, like if it was like salt and all that involved, you could kind of like crystallized, but it's still fossilized. Okay. But in terms of like, you know, like hitting the side of a cliff and seeing all the things inside, yeah, it wouldn't be long enough for that.
However, a 2015 claim by Mr. Mawson that a mummified body purportedly that of an alien found near Nazca in Peru was later debunked as it was shown to be a human child. That's not a human fucking child. No way that's a human child.
If there's something wrong with them, maybe.
Do you know what it looks like proportion wise? Do you ever see an American Dad? There is that kind of weird zombie kid that was made up by a professor. That's what he looks like. It was like he's stitched together.
Yeah, I don't know, like what's going on with its collarbone is like way out and all, and it's weird.
Speaking about the latest discovery in Mexico City, delegations that the specimen had been examined by an autonomous national university of Mexico. He said scientists use radiocarbon dating to gather DNA evidence, and X-rays had shown had eggs inside. Oh fuck! This is all bullshit.
Spider eggs, like a spider went in and laid eggs. Did they specify what kind of eggs? No, I think they might be stressing
his alien eggs inside there.
All right, if that's the autonomous, I'm just saying he looks like Boris Johnson.
Journalist, that's him. That's the guy that has the aliens.
Okay.
So no, I will say we are talking about the same country whose president not long ago posted a picture on social media claiming to have a picture of what would they call it? I think it's an elf.
He said I think it's an elf.
Mexican president posted a photo on social media account Saturday showing what he said appeared to be a mythological woodland spirit similar to an elf. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador did not seem to be joking when he posted a photo of an alux, a mischievous woodland spirit in Mayan folklore. This is from this year too. It's from February.
Bonkers. Next to be showing us the chupacabra.
He said it was taken 3 days ago by an engineer. It appears to be an alux. That's the way you said it, isn't it? Alux?
Aluxe? It's Spanish.
Everything is mystical. The nighttime, the picture, look, this is what he should have thought about. It's like a tree, but it looks like there's something. No, it doesn't look small. It looks fucking like a human-sized person, doesn't it?
It looks like a human-sized person with a grey wig or a monkey.
Yeah, do they have monkeys in Mexico?
Oh, good question. I don't know.
Fucking top-notch research around here. Hang on a minute, I'm going to find this out right now while we're recording. Do they have monkeys in Mexico?
They have monkeys in the oddest places. I know that they do. I just don't know if they do in
monkeys in Mexico.
I would say no. I would say they're not like...
And you would... There are 2 main species of monkeys in Mexico. The Mexican black howler monkey.
It looks... Bet you it's a howler monkey. I've seen them.
And the Yucatan spider monkey.
Oh, the Yucatan.
They all are also known as Jeffrey Spider Monkey. Jeffrey Spider Monkey. Oh God! Well, at least it's either in Yucatan Spider Monkey.
The Yucatan.
Yucatan. Oh, you were so much better than this man. So Mexico is filling up with tiny little aliens and elves. How does he know that it wasn't? They're not the same thing.
Could be a howler monkey in that tree. See?
Yeah, they do have. Yeah, definitely. That's what it is.
I didn't know that Mexico had them, but that's the monkey I had in my head.
And that fossil they have is hardly from a fucking monkey. Monkey size, isn't it?
Compare the monkey to the fossil. Look, a short chin. Look at that.
Mexico, we have ye. It's a fucking monkey. That's what it is.
Howler monkey.
That's what the fossil is, a monkey. Bullshit, you're aliens. Debunked. They're debunked, and then all the people getting cancelled this week again. Well, has Russell Brand been cancelled yet? Is he officially cancelled?
I don't think it's looking good for the man.
Well, we were talking about that only yesterday. It's like, you never know in these situations, because some people have been let go from the entertainment industry for really small things, or what you perceive small compared to what has been done. And then there's other people who have done really, really shitty things, like Chris Brown. And that fucker's picking up awards every fucking... Didn't he pick up an award last week?
He did. But you see, my thing about Russell Brand is I was like, in my head, I was like, I'm going to watch the episode and then I'll see what it's about. And then I heard about the Jimmy Savile phone call and I was like, well, that's pretty much...
That's where they're like, Jimmy Savile's basically telling him to send over his assistant in the nip, is it?
First inquiring about if he had a sister first, though. Yeah.
Do you think if he had said, I do have a sister, but you can't have her, you can have my assistant, Jimmy Savile would have been like, no, I'd rather do the nastiest thing possible to you and take her and insist on your sister.
I'd say he'd find some way of insisting on sister.
I didn't know. Why did no one say anything? Was he making the BBC that much money? Jimmy Savile,
The look of him made me uncomfortable. Even before all this
that's what I'm saying.
Like,
I remember as a kid seeing him on TV and thinking he's a dirty looking prick.
I wouldn't want him. He'd scare me, yeah.
And was he must have been like, how much money was he bringing into the BBC that this was okay,
An awful lot, I would assume.
And then Russell
he had
Brand
all that power, and it was...
But that's what they were saying, right? That he basically had stroke over everybody, and then no one really knows why or who he had fucking dirt on.
The Queen.
They're all reptilians, that's what it was. They were covering up for him.
Jimmy Savile looks like a reptilian.
Jimmy fucking Savile's a reptilian. Or was a reptilian. But yeah, Russell Brand is going to go down as the next Jimmy Savile. And I see the fucker. But I mean, obviously not that bad, but pretty bad.
I would say though, in the eyes, he looks like a bit of he could be a reptilian too.
Oh yeah, definitely. But he's got cult leader vibes just banging off him, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. And maybe this is what pushes him into it. If he's completely pushed out of the limelight now, the only way to get people's attention will be through one of these little fucking freaky yoga cults.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah. He's like the British version of Jared Leto with their culty.
Yeah, but yeah. I don't mind some of Jared Leto stuff though.
I don't mind some of Jared Leto or Russell Brand stuff, but I think in real life they come across like the whole...
But you know what, we were talking about that then as well, Russell Brand, and you're just after saying there you don't mind some of his stuff. And it's like, you know, the hard part now is for people to like separate art from the artist. Like I was saying to you yesterday, I had to do it with Danny Masterson because I love Hyde.
Yeah.
And I love Rooster. But what he's done is terrible. No, to be honest, I was already on my way to cutting ties with that man in my mind as soon as I found out he was a Scientologist.
Yeah.
I was like, hopefully he'll get out of it and cop on to himself. But then all this shit came out and it's like, oh no.
Well, now he's a rapist and a Scientologist.
Double whammy. But it's just like, trying to separate that, because I could still watch that 70s show and I still enjoy Hyde. I still watch The Ranch and I still enjoy Rooster.
Oh, they're funny.
But,
yeah.
but I remember, like, and this is a more serious version of this, is when the whole Chris Benoit thing went on, right? And I was, a couple of years later, I started wrestling.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, one day we were training and we were in this, we're taking a break, having lunch basically. And the discussion came up of Chris Benoit, and a few people's reaction was, I will not even watch that man's match. Or it was about, like, who was the greatest wrestler? And someone mentioned him, and I was like, I won't even watch his fucking matches. He's disgusting.
I know, he said that.
But I was sitting there and I was thinking, it's like, what he did was disgusting. What he did in real life was disgusting. But you are still he was still a great wrestler. You can't take that away just because it doesn't. We don't have to celebrate it, but you can say he wasn't.
Same way.
Do you know what I mean?
There might have been like war, like people that were like awful in what they did, like in real, but like they were great tacticians.
But that's it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's no kind of getting away from that. And I feel bad. See, that's another kind of example then of people like vilifying him straight away. But then you got to look at what was mental health and what was, because I mean, you look at the build up to his thing. And he was losing his mind. He thought the mafia were coming after him. He was taking different routes to work every day.
And the mafia definitely weren't coming after him.
I don't think so. Different. And they reckon if he hadn't have fucking died, if he hadn't have killed himself,
he'd have died.
He would have been died. He would have been dead within a year. Like, his heart, when they found him, his heart was enlarged and all that shit from years of steroids.
But he had that thing wrong from like concussion and stuff like that, didn't they? Wasn't that on the Vice interview?
But that's it. His brain was like an 80-year-old dementia patient.
Christ.
And he was tipping 40, I think. Not even 40. He'd probably be my age when he died. Shit, would he? Would have been around it. Eddie Guerrero was about my age when he died as well. Do you know?
Yeah.
Same kind of shit. Heart problems from years of
steroids. Yeah.
No, he'd been off him for a while. But fucking.
I was just thinking that. I remember seeing like kind of like later. I didn't think he looked like he was on steroids.
But then we were talking about as well, like after Danny Mass and the thing and the Chris Brown situation, and I was asking you who's deciding on the punishments here, because like with real law you got, there are set amount of years that go with each crime, and then it's like, why does Chris Brown get a pass and he's back on TV, and then other guys might have to fucking beg and grovel for something a lot less, even guys who are going out there and might actually try and better themselves, try and go get the help they need, try and make things better. Do they not deserve a second chance when this prick is out here? And I'm pretty sure Rihanna isn't the only person only woman he's beaten.
No, I remember reading it that there was others.
So I mean, like, what way does it work? I need to know before I say something stupid, people. Come on, give me a hand here. How do I get away with that?
You just don't talk about anything other than the story that we came here to tell.
So we'll have no more intros on this show. From now on, it's just going to go straight from music into story. And at the end of the story, I go, that's the end.
See you later.
And they all lived happily ever after.
Or did they?
Anyway, talking about people getting cancelled. If these guys from the 70s here were around the modern day, they were definitely getting cancelled. Pretty sure eating people is a taboo subject, yeah?
Ew. Yep.
So
that's why they did it. Did they do it for survival?
Technically, yes. I'll get into it a bit more next week.
Was it survival because there was no other food there, though?
Oh, poverty at the start.
Oh, okay.
But I will get into that next week.
Okay.
We'll get into it because there's a lot here to do. So in the summer of 1973, in the rural and far out suburbs of Dallas, Texas, a rash of grave robberies began to plague the area, with graves not just being disturbed and robbed, but macabre art pieces being erected in their place, using the desecrated bodies as subject matter. Families from the area were forced to watch as their loved ones were dissected and put back together in what looked to be kind of like a satanically ritualistic fashion.
Okay.
Police were stumped with no leads or motives to be found at the crime scene. Little did they know that these events would only mark the beginning of what would become a 23-year massacre unlike anything Texas, the United States, or even the world had ever seen before. Sally, 19, and Franklin Hardesty, 23, whose family originally came from the rural Dallas area, decided to use the strange events as an excuse to take a road trip. They planned to go along with friends Kirk, 20, Pam, 19, and Jerry, 22, to check on their grandfather's grave and ensure it was still in one piece, and then they could, take off and go for a little party in the sun.
Nice.
The only account of what happened that day is from Sally Hardesty herself, as she was the only member of the friend group to live long enough to see the day through. For years, this account has been seen as unreliable, due to Sally being an absolute mess mentally when recounting the tale to authorities and doctors later. A short time after this, Sally would slip into a catatonic state to which she would never recover. Now, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out the best way to tell this story.
Okay.
I think I have it figured out. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to tell you Sally's story first, in her words. From there, I'll move on and give you kind of the facts as we know it, and maybe some bios of the suspects, and then we'll finish up today on the rise and fall of Drayton Sawyer, aka Walter Edward Sawyer.
Finished today, so this is like definitely a two-parter.
At least. Today, we'll just be looking at the Sawyers between 1973 to 1986, and it's a story of madness, mayhem, butchery, and a human barbecue. It's a series in itself if we had the time to cover it. Next week you get all that again, but adding conspiracy, MK Ultra, the Illuminati, a history of violence, and the truth behind Leatherface.
Okay, so lots of ground to cover then.
Sure is, so let's get stuck in. So it's August 18th, 1973, and as I said, there's some nasty shit going on around the graveyards in Newton Muerto in Hunt County, Texas, just outside Dallas. Sally and the gang had been enjoying the sweltering summer sun and driving across Texas, milking the closing months of vacation before returning to college a few weeks later in September. Sally and her brother Franklin had been looking for an excuse to escape the family home all summer, and when they heard their father's stress over missing work to go inspect his own father's grave, they jumped at the chance to volunteer the services, hitting the road the very next day with all their friends in tow. There's nothing better than a good road trip now, to be honest. I miss it. Loading up the car with junk food and CDs, windows down, volume up to the max, stopping at every petrol station you see to pee. Good times.
Yeah, I love a good road trip.
I'm pleased to say we get to start this episode with a little good news, because when the Hardesty siblings arrived at Newt Cemetery, it was discovered that their grandfather's grave was one of the few left still intact. That's it. That's all the good news we'll have for this episode. So yeah, hold on to that, because once this takes off, this is a massacre in every sense and meaning of the word.
Lovely.
Being that they were close by, Sally and Franklin decided to take the opportunity to go discover their roots and decided to follow along the trail to where the old Hardesty farm once stood. It was as they went along this trail that they saw a hitchhiker standing with his thumb out, melting at the side of the road. Fucking roasting in Texas in the summer.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Feeling bad for him, the gang pulled over to pick him up. This was their first mistake. The man only known to Sally as the hitchhiker is presumed to be Nubbin Sawyer, Joint's second oldest brother. Joint because he had a twin brother named Robert Chop Top Sawyer, who we'll be meeting a little later in the story.
Chop Top.
No, I say presumed because that's all we can really do in this case, presume. Because the Sawyers themselves aren't exactly the social number types. They were and had been off the grid for almost all of modern time. The dribs and drabs that we do know about them is patched together from information gathered by the army when brothers Robert and Wilmer served. We also have a few stories, urban legends and survivor testimony that passed around neighbouring counties around Texas throughout the 23-year killing spree.
How do we know if, what happened if Sally was catatonic?
We'll get into that soon. We're getting there. I'm not going to dig too far into the history of the Sawyers either right now, because there's a lot of ground to cover. But in the next episode, we'll take a deep dive into the whole clan and their background.
Okay.
So, it is a little murky as to what happened here, because again, we only have the word of the very mentally unstable Sally Hardesty to go on. But she says that after picking up Nubbins, her brother Franklin and the hitchhiker started to hit it off. Although she said at this stage she believed him to be a man of special needs, saying he spoke like a child, giddy and chatty while still a little withdrawn and shy. He and Franklin spoke about the now declining slaughterhouse business that used to once employ the people of these parts, including Nubbins' father and brother. But due to the automation and rise of the machines in the industry, people have been laid off and the area had become practically deserted. This slaughter talk was all a little too much for the girls, who asked to change the subject. This is when things kind of took a turn. Nubbins began to empty his little satchel, producing pictures of a carcass he had butchered himself. He then snapped a Polaroid of Franklin and tried to sell it to him, before setting the picture on fire in the back of the van and attacking Franklin with a switchblade knife when he tried to stop him. Ooh. Obviously at this point, the group did the sensible thing. They pulled in, booted Nubbins to the roadside again, and off they took to the Hardesty farm without him. As the car spun off, though, Nubbins just had enough time to smear his blood on the side after cutting his... Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. He cut his own hand before he cut fucking Franklin.
Why?
He had like this, just because he was sitting there, he had the switchblade, he just sliced right across the palm of his hand, and that should have been the first warning sign. They should have pulled over then and booted him out, to be honest with you. Franklin's wounds were only superficial, and although he complained enough about it, he would be fine without medical assistance. Not that he could have gotten any in the middle of nowhere, Texas, even if he'd needed it.
And that's why you should always carry a first aid kit, or just, don't pick up the hitchhikers.
Running low on fuel, they stopped at a rural Gulf filling station, only to have the strange-looking man who runs it tell them that the tanks are empty and that he was waiting for the gas tanker to show up. When the old man learns of their destination and that it is the old Hardesty home, he advises the young people against going there, saying people who lived around the area were not receptive to strangers. Ignoring the old man's warning, they buy some barbecue sandwiches from the old man and depart for the family home, which they finally arrive at a short while later.
If we've learned anything from our short time covering these stories, is always listen to the old man's warnings. In fact, always listen to the locals' warnings. I mean, we saw in the Summer Isle episode how he could have left the situation at any time that he chose. They needed him to stay on that island of his own free will. Like, maybe it could have been the same for these kids.
I'll tell you a little later why, but they had already been marked for slaughter.
Yikes.
So, as the group set out to investigate and search through the abandoned property, poor Franklin was stuck back in the van due to the rough terrain.
Why?
Oh shit, yeah. Franklin's a paraplegic, so he's confined to a wheelchair. Unfortunately, the terrain was too rough and not the most ideal setting for his chair.
Oh shit.
The gang eventually split up, with Kirk and Pam venturing off to find a swimming hole, and Jerry, Sally and Franklin staying behind at the farm. A couple of hours passed, and with no sign of Kirk and Pam returning, Sally and Franklin began to get anxious, both wanting to move on before it got too late. They were still a little shook up after the run-in with Nubbins earlier that day, and Franklin in particular was nervous he might have followed them.
Yeah, I'd be worried too. Like, they left for a swimming hole a couple of hours ago, yeah? Like, what if they drowned or something?
Yeah, and that's what Sally was thinking too. So she sent Jerry packing, asking him to go check on the two missing lovebirds. And Jerry did just that. He took off in search of Kirk and Pam, but just like them, he'd walk to the swimming hole, never to be seen again.
Ooh.
Night came, and with no sign of anyone returning, Sally and Franklin had to bite the bullet and go look for their friends.
Yeah, after what happened with the hitchhiker earlier, I'm sorry, but if my friends go missing in that situation, I'm assuming that he's after catching up with us and attacked my friends. And it's dark, it's scary, I'm getting back in that van and going to find the cops.
And Jerry has the keys.
Damn it, Jerry.
As if the situation wasn't bad enough, Franklin, being a bit of a wimp, refused to stay behind at the van alone and insisted that Sally pushed him along the unpaved path through the woods. Again, I will point out that this is all the testimony of a very mentally fragile Sally Hardesty. She states that as they struggled down the rocky terrain, a monster exploded out of the darkness, wielding a chainsaw, and before she knew what was happening, it was hacking away at her older brother like a butcher does to meat.
Holy shit, a monster with a chainsaw, that's fucked up.
Sally said she took off running aimlessly. Last time she had been to this farm, she was 8 years old. It was now overgrown and the landscape had changed to that of her memory. But she could hear a noise in the distance, a humming, a gas generator. And without even thinking of the possibility that the monster might be the owner of said gas generator, she ran towards it. It was there she found an old farmhouse and ran inside with the hopes of sanctuary. What she found was an Ed Gein inspired funhouse.
Oh, I know about Ed Gein. Now, he was a butcher of Plainfield, or the Plainfield Ghoul. He was an American murderer, suspected serial killer, and body snatcher. Gein's crimes committed around his hometown of Plainfield, Wisconsin, gathered widespread notoriety in 1957 after authorities discovered that he had exhumed corpses from local graveyards and fashioned keepsakes from their bones and skin. He also confessed to the killings of two women, tavern owner Mary Hogan in 1954 and hardware store owner Bernice Warden in 1957. We'll be covering him next week on the Patreon for Real Monsters. So when you say the farmhouse was like Ed Gein's playhouse, you essentially mean that the furniture and decor is all human flesh and bones.
Yeah, like Pee-wee's playhouse, except all the furniture died, causing Pee-wee to go on a murderous rampage. Rest in peace, Pee-wee. So Sally was inside, but far from safe. And as she took off up the stairs to find a hiding place, the hulking monster cut through the front door with his chainsaw, pounding up the steps behind her. She found a room to hide in, but when her eyes adjusted to the light, she could see she wasn't alone. A decrepit old couple, one the woman long dead, the other a man looked dead too, but a bit more recent. More on that a little later. Sally was stuck, cornered in an upstairs room with the monster closing in on her. No way around him to get to the door. That was when Sally's fight or flight instinct kicked in, and out of pure hope of self-preservation, she burst through the upstairs window, rolling down the porch roof and landing relatively safely below. Adrenaline now in full gear, she took off running from the house, hysterically screaming as she could still hear the roar of the monster's chainsaw follow her from the distance.
Yikes.
Sally keeps running and running until she finally reaches the garage from earlier that day. She said once the garage was in sight, the revving of the chainsaw just started to die down in the distance. There she found the old man from before. She was hysterically telling the old man about the chainsaw-wielding monster who killed her brother and taken her friends. And the old man said, look, he'll go and he'll help Sally get help, bring her to the cops. While he was gone, Sally noticed the smoke pit from where the barbecue was made. Sally said she noticed something odd in the pit, but as she was about to go in for a closer look, the old man returned, suddenly attacking Sally, who tried to defend herself with a kitchen knife. But the old man knocked the knife out of Sally's hand with a broom. He then beat Sally unconscious with that broom, put a gunny sack over her head and used some twine to tie her up.
Another Sawyer.
Yup. When Sally woke, she woke to, well, you remember the part in Alice in Wonderland, the Mad Hatter's Tea Party? Yeah, well, imagine that if it was organised by Ed Gein and Jeffrey Dahmer.
Fun.
Sally's hands were bound, quite literally, to the arms of the homemade chair.
They were human arms, weren't they?
Yep. Chair straight out of hell, lady. First person she saw was Nubbins, causing her to scream. Then she saw the old man arguing with the monster. The monster looked different now. His face, it was caked in makeup, and his demeanour was much more docile and timid than before. The old man had a firm hold over him, and at the time Sally thought he was possibly the monster's father. It was then she heard the monster's name for the first time. Leatherface. That's when she finally stopped to take a look at him, when she finally realised that the monster was a hulking man in a mask, but not just any old Halloween mask, no. It was the mask of human flesh, the face of one of his victims.
Face swapping before it was cool.
With a Donner Party team for the night, the family prepared and set the table in front of her, with all three brothers practically bursting with excitement. But before they could dish up the food, there was one more member of the family to come to the table. Nubbins and Leatherface went to get Grandfather Earl from upstairs.
They left the old man upstairs with the two old corpses.
The old man was one of the two old corpses. Earl Sawyer at this point was supposed to be 124 years old, having been born in 1849. Probably, but that's the age Drayton Sawyer claimed him to be, and he looked it too apparently, looking like a freshly rotten corpse. And if you believe two separate survivors, he was alive and kicking. Well, he was alive at least all the way up to 1986, making him the grand old age of, what did we say, 136, 137?
Yeah, 137, 138?
Around that when he finally died, although a conflicting account does claim that he survived longer to 1990, making him about 140, 141, but you can decide that for yourself later.
Well, how could Sally tell if he was alive, if he was a barely moving, rotting corpse?
Oh, you're gonna love this.
Am I?
As the monster Leatherface held Sally's arm out, Nubbins sliced her finger, letting out a little stream of blood. Then Leatherface forcibly stuck it into Grandfather's mouth, who began to suck on it excitingly, shuffling in his chair with joy.
No.
Yeah, the sheer terror of it all caused Sally to pass out too. This time waking up at the dinner table with everyone in place ready to begin the meal. She screamed, Nubbin screamed and howled, Leatherface just howled, and the old man howled and laughed. The scene was chaos. The family tormented her for the rest of the night, forcing her to sit there at the table while they ate a meal that was obviously made up of human flesh. Yeah. All night they mocked and played with Sally, but to Sally, in her dread-induced shock, all of it came out as muffled noise. I imagine it would be like Snoopy when the adults are talking. Wah, 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 wah. She could hear them interact with each other. She said it sounded like they were arguing. Next thing she remembered hearing is Nubbins screaming something about giving her to Grandpa. Let him have some fun before Bubba takes her face. She thought this was it. She went into total fucking panic. Leatherface came to get her, dragging her across the room to where the old decrepit man sat. They put a bucket under her head to catch the blood. Then they got a large mallet-like hammer and put it into the hand of the corpse-like grandfather Sawyer. Nubbins held Sally in place as Leatherface guided his grandfather's arm, and to be fair, the old man landed a few licks. But he was too weak to finish the job, and an overexcited and impatient Nubbins let Sally go in order to grab the hammer to do the job himself. This was it, Sally's one chance to get away, and just like she did earlier when she was cornered by the monster Leatherface, she took off towards the nearest window and burst her way through again.
She's going to owe the Sawyers a fortune in windows.
She'd make a fucking fortune though as a stunt woman later. Bursting through windows, action movies. She could be the chick that every time there's an explosion, she's the one like bursting through the window and then flying through the air with the flames, the fireballs coming up behind her.
Just one to put in the CV.
It was morning now and bright. It took her eyes a second to adjust, and that's really all the time she had, a second, because the brothers were coming hot on her heels. Sally took off running towards the road, caked in blood and screaming at the top of her voice. Again, behind her, she could hear the roar of the chainsaw as Leatherface and Nubbins came bounding up behind her. Nubbins got close, and as they reached the main road, he had a hold of her shirt, slicing away at her back with a blade. But in all his excitement, Nubbins failed to see the oncoming truck coming around the bend. Sally moved just in time, but Nubbins wasn't so lucky and got splattered across the road, covering an already caked Sally in even more blood. The startled and confused truck driver got out of his cab to survey the damage, but before he could ask any questions, was met by a now irate and confused Leatherface. Nubbins' death had fried his already fragile mind, and he was basically just swinging his chainsaw around like a lunatic.
Oh yeah, because just now he started acting crazy. Now he's starting to look like a lunatic.
It was in this frenzy that he apparently accidentally cut his own leg, slowing him down just long enough for Sally to flag down another truck, a pickup truck with an open bed. The truck driver that killed Nubbins took off running. He never came forward. You've never seen again. I'm not even sure if he got away, to be honest, because in my head I reckon like Drayton was probably waiting for him, or fucking Leatherface was going hunting that guy down after he realised he had lost his, main target.
Yeah, but he left his truck behind. Like, surely they could match the truck to the driver. Like, he has to have it registered to himself or whatever company he drives for.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. Anyway, Sally got into the back of the truck and the driver pulled a U-turn and hauled ass out of there, leaving the monster alone, swinging his tool in the wind, screaming and squealing like a pig in distress. Sally was safe, but her mind would never be free again. Never free from the memory of the monster Leatherface or his demented cannibal brothers.
Poor Sally. But she survived, and at least that means that she could testify against the pricks and see them all fry like her friends on the farm. So, like, how did that all work out, the investigation and the arrests?
It didn't. Well, not the way you'd hope, anyway. Sally was broken in every sense of the word. She babbled this story back to police, and the parts they could understand, they could hardly believe. Sally couldn't give them solid information, and she was only getting worse. She was slipping further and further away with each passing day, and the police at this point only had a general idea of the area it might have happened in. Rough descriptions of suspects and no names to go by. Their only hope was to find the abandoned truck left on the roadside, if the Sawyers hadn't moved it already. That, or surely the bloodstained road where Nubbins was killed.
But what about the guy who saved Sally? Like, he'd remember where he picked her up, right? Like, he hardly was traumatised into amnesia by the whole incident.
Yeah, that guy dropped Sally to the hospital, and as soon as the nurses had her in their care, he was gone. Like a ghost. Another mystery in the sick, twisted story.
Shit.
Cops could only assume the guy just decided to wash his hands of the situation, probably not too interested in getting wrapped up in a mass murder case or having his name mixed up in all the mess.
Could you really blame him?
So, a month-long search for the house and filling station got underway, and after a lot of searching, authorities finally came across the location they are now sure was the scene of the crime. But at the time, they were just going off of clues and common sense. They found the bloodstained road, and with the house and filling station in close proximity, they could only deduce that they were in the right place. Only problem is, there was nothing there. No Sawyers, No bodies, no evidence at all. Nothing but Nubbin's leftover blood, and in 1973, that wasn't worth a whole lot.
Why did it take them so long? Like, surely they would have started their investigation at the Hardesty farm first and then found the Sawyers living in close proximity.
Yeah, they would have if they had known Sally was a Hardesty.
Yeah.
At this point, she was a Crazy Jane Doe, or Sally Doe at least. They were able to get her first name out of her.
Okay.
No, it wasn't until her uncle, Lieutenant Bodie Lefty Enright, former Texas Ranger, came looking for her in Franklin that the police knew who they were dealing with, consequently tipping them off to where the possible crime site was. But like I said, the house and garage were clear. The only indication of a name was a pair of overalls found in the garage with the name tag W.E. Slaughter on them. The only indication of the missing kids that they had even been there was the van with Nubbin's blood smeared on the side, which still sat abandoned at the Hardesty home.
W.E. Slaughter, yeah, I get it. Very funny. Oh, you know, I've been wondering, do you think Nubbins had the blood on the van as a way to mark it for his brothers? Like almost like marking them for slaughter before sending them up the line, like to the kill room?
Yeah, I think so. It all seems like too much of a coincidence, and we go on to learn this wasn't the Sawyers' first rodeo. They had this whole scenario well planned out in practice. So unfortunately, with no bodies, no evidence, and no eyewitness, the missing teens were marked just that, missing. And the Texas Chainsaw Massacre slipped into history, nothing more than an urban legend. Leatherface, just another boogeyman.
What do you mean no witnesses? What about Sally?
Well, she had gone full-blown catatonic at this stage. From this point on, Sally can't help any investigation anymore.
So the Sawyers just get away?
For now. And for the next 13 years, they would keep to the back roads, feeding on anyone unfortunate enough to cross their path. 1973 was the first time they had nearly been exposed, after managing to stay successfully off the radar for anywhere up to 100 years, if Earl's given age is to be believed. Drayton, being the eldest, needed to regroup. At this point, he was alone in hiding with his grandfather and Leatherface, or Bubba as he had been known to go by, and he wasn't getting any younger. Drayton was born in 1920, making him 53 at the time.
Okay.
Bubba was 1947, making him 26 at the time. And Nubbins and Chop Top were born together. They were twins. They were in between the other two. They were 28 years old each.
I am dying to hear more about this Chop Top fella. Like, how did you get a name like that?
Lucky for you, Chop Top is just about to join our story.
Ooh.
While his brothers hid in the back roads of deep rural Texas, Robert Sawyer was at war. The Vietnam War, to be exact.
So the Vietnam War went from 1954 to 1975 and was a protracted conflict that pitted the communist government of North Vietnam and its allies in South Vietnam, known as the Viet Cong, against the government of South Vietnam and its principal ally, the United States. Called the American War in Vietnam, or in full, the War Against the Americans to Save the Nation. The war...
That sounds like such a anti-Team America.
Team America, definitely. The war was also part of a larger regional conflict and a manifestation of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union and their respective allies. At the heart of the conflict was the desire of North Vietnam, which had defeated the French colonial administration of Vietnam in 1954, to unify the entire country under a single communist regime modelled after those of the Soviet Union and China. The South Vietnamese government, on the other hand, fought to preserve a Vietnam more closely aligned with the West. US military advisors, present in small numbers throughout the 1950s, were introduced on a large scale beginning in 1961, and active combat units were introduced in 1965. By 1969, more than 500,000 US military personnel were stationed in Vietnam. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union and China poured weapons, supplies, and advisors into the north, which in turn provided support, political direction, and regular combat troops for the campaign in the south. The costs and casualties of the growing war proved too much for the United States to bear, and US combat units were withdrawn by 1973. In 1975, South Vietnam fell to a full-scale invasion by the north. The human costs of the long conflict were harsh for all involved. Not until 1995 did Vietnam release its official estimate of war dead. as many as 2 million civilians on both sides, and some 1.1 million North Vietnamese and Viet Cong fighters. The US military has estimated that between 200,000 and 250,000 South Vietnamese soldiers died in the war.
And near the end of that war, Robert was attacked by a machete-wielding enemy soldier who sliced a chunk out of the top of his head. This led to him having a metal plate put into his head, earning him the name Chop Top. And after some time in the VA hospital, was given a settlement and released from the army. It was while he was in the VA hospital that he started to get regular mail again, corresponding back and forth in coded letters to Drayton, making plans for his homecoming and a resurgence to the public as a respectable family with a barbecue and chili business.
Yeah, I wouldn't be eating anything that they made just in case. Wait, was there human in the barbecue in Drayton's filling station? The barbecue he sold to people, like Sally and her friends bought some, yeah?
I can neither confirm nor deny, but I can tell you if they hadn't been doing it up until this point, they were about to start doing it in a big way. Ugh. Because once he was released from the VA hospital, Chop Top rejoined his family and purchased an abandoned amusement park located in Dallas called Texas Battleland.
Amazing.
Using money he received from the government after being discharged from the military for his injury. This is where the family would finally settle down and start their new venture. The last roundup rolling grill barbecue and chili, a mobile fast food truck that would slaughter, butcher and sell their own meat to the public, with the theme park being used as a production factory.
Disgusting. Like Joe Metheny, didn't he kill sex workers, then mix their flesh in with minced beef and pork, then to sell them on to the public from a small barbecue stand that he ran? The same with pig farmer Robert Picton. Like, it was believed that the meat he gave to his employees on the farm is suspected to be meat taken from his victims.
Exactly like that. But before we push on, do you want to know something nasty about Chop Top?
Go on, so.
At some point, right, Chop Top's metal plate became exposed, like flesh gone, bare steel showing. He uses a wig to cover it up to the most part. But he used to walk around with a wire coat hanger and a lighter.
Yeah.
Heating it up and scratching it in the open moon in his head. Picking off tiny, tiny pieces of flesh each time and eating them.
That is absolutely rotten.
That's not all. Chop Top fashioned his dead twin brother Nubbin's corpse into a crude marionette-like form, which he carried around with him and treated as if he was still alive.
Of course he did.
Now, as I said earlier, while they waited for Chop Top's return, the remaining Sawyer clan still had to eat. So over the 13-year period between the Hardesty event and what was about to come, the family periodically attacked and killed unknowing travellers on the Texan back roads. And although the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre went down as an urban legend, their continued activity didn't go completely unnoticed. Earlier, I pointed out the victims of the 1973 massacre were still down as missing, not dead. And missing people generally will have family that continue to search for them. This went doubly so for the Hardesties. You see, although Lieutenant Lefty Enright discovered his catatonic niece alive in New Murto, his nephew Franklin was still missing, and until shown otherwise in Lefty's head, he was presumed alive. Thing about Lefty is he's like the Terminator. Once he's got a mission in his mind, he will see it out to the end. That was even more so this time, as it was personal. It was for his family, and as if he wasn't motivated enough, the grief-stricken uncle went hell-bent on revenge after 1977, when Sally Hardesty passed away, living out the last of her days in a medical care facility, still deep in a catatonic state. So this girl was in her early 20s at that point.
When she died. Oh, God love her.
Lefty was a retired Texas Ranger with plenty of experience and time in his hands. He was destroyed by the family tragedy, and he had used that grief to fuel his investigation. Every time a body was butchered in Texas, Lefty would be there, and over time he would follow the bodies, just waiting patiently for the Sawyers to slip up and reveal themselves. It would take 13 years, but a small-time call-in radio station in Fort Worth, Dallas, would give him the evidence and the lead he so long desired. Vanita Stretch Brock was a 29-year-old disc jockey for the KOKLA radio station in August of 1986. She ran the night shift, hosting a call-in rock and roll request show along with her radio engineer LG McPeters.
Okay.
On the night of August 26th, she got a call she'd never forget. Two high school seniors, Buzz and Rick, heavily intoxicated and on their way to the Cotton Bowl for the Texas-Oklahoma game, rang in to the show, and to put it simply, they started acting the prick, making inappropriate comments and wailing down the line. Due to the phone setup, Stretch couldn't kill the phone line and needed the caller to hang up to end the call. As Stretch pleaded with the two delinquents, trying to get him off the line, she noticed the tone on the line suddenly begin to change. Ooh. The once brazen and cocky teens suddenly sounded scared. Their speech suddenly became frantic. There was a humming sound on the line. It sounded like it was growing closer. And as it did, the boys' scream became wilder. Over the course of about 2 or 3 minutes, you could hear the boys as they pleaded with whoever was present to leave them alone. She then heard it. Full blast and unmistakable. The sound of a chainsaw belting off steel, a gushing sound followed by a crash. Then finally, the line went dead.
It was spooky.
Stretch and LG weren't the only two to hear that call that night.
Well, obviously, it was on live on the radio. Everyone within broadcasting distance would have heard the call.
Fair enough. Lefty Enright being one of those people in the broadcasting distance of that call. And before the line went dead on the air, Lefty was in his car and on the way to Dallas.
So would this be the first confirmed Leatherface attack?
Would have been if the cops didn't think it was just a bad accident.
But the radio call, surely that's evidence.
Remember, Leatherface at this stage was just an urban legend. A boogeyman, a scary story to tell around the campfire. For the last 13 years, law enforcement had been out on countless calls to investigate sightings of this beast who had become as elusive as the legendary Bigfoot. The 1973 incident was swept under the rug and put down to nothing more than the mad ravings of a lunatic girl. They knew something went down out there, and judging by the amount of blood she was covered in and the bloodstain in the road by the farmhouse, something fucked up definitely happened to Sally Hardesty that day. But that's all they had. So over time, law enforcement had been kind of conditioned to just ignore the warning signs. All chainsaw-related deaths were quickly chalked down as accidents and put to bed before rumours of the killer family could kick up again.
How many chainsaw related deaths were they seeing? That's my question.
Well. It was for this reason that the presence of Lefty Enright was most definitely not appreciated. You see, although Lefty was once seen as a great Texas Ranger, since retirement and the death of his niece and nephew, he was seen as a bit of a joke, a shell of the man he once was, an old man chasing ghosts around the back roads of rural Texas. And to be fair, Lefty wasn't really all there anymore. The grief had driven him to snap. He was disgusted by the very possibility of the Sawyers existing, and he was hell-bent on revenge.
Could you blame him?
It took the promise of the officer in charge of the car crash that he would ask the local paper to run an article appealing for witnesses to the accident, and that was the only thing that was going to get rid of Lefty that day.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
This was the article that brought Stretch and Lefty together. Stretch, not able to let the chilling phone call go, saw the article and contacted Lefty with the tape. This will give Lefty an idea to lure the Sawyers out and give him a chance to finally get them and get justice. So, another little sidebar, right? The day that he had this all planned, he had this big plan in his head for how he was going to catch the Sawyers. But first, he decided to go and get himself some weapons.
Okay.
So Lefty headed to this old chainsaw shop just outside Dallas, right?
Yeah.
And this is coming from the owner of the shop. He said he was inside on the phone, and Lefty, he said, this fucking cowboy cop looking guy comes in.
Yeah.
And Lefty walks over, there's this little table, and he pulls out like about a couple of grand, a grand or two, throws it on the table.
Yeah.
Shopkeeper doesn't know what's going on at this point. He's just there asking Lefty questions. What do you want? Can I show you something? How can I help you? All this kind of shit. Lefty just starts grabbing chainsaws off the wall and having a look at them.
Okay.
Picks up the biggest one he got and he puts that down right next to the money. And he looks around, he picks up two smaller ones. And he never said a word to the shopkeeper once. Picks up the chainsaws, walks outside, and outside they had like a testing post.
Yeah.
So it was literally a tree that they had cut down, and that was where you tested out your chainsaw, see how it was any good before you bought it.
Yeah.
He said he has never in his life seen anyone use a chainsaw the way Lefty used a chainsaw. He said he basically was using it as a motorized axe. Like he had it on, it was running, but he wasn't just like sawing down, he was like hacking down at it and hacking and hacking and hacking away at this fucking thing. He said he laughed his ass off watching this idiot go and play, work the chainsaw. Well, obviously, Lefty had some plans.
Yeah, so he's gearing up for something. Like, he obviously feels like his plan is going to work.
Sure did. You see, the Sawyers enjoyed their anonymity. Outside of the 1973 incident, they had successfully stayed off the radar for generations. So the last thing they wanted was attention from the public. I mean, at this point, Drayton is a 2-time Dallas Chili Cook-Off champion. He is a well-known and respected member of the community, running a thriving barbecue and chili business. Last thing he wanted or needed was anyone snooping around or asking questions.
Yeah, questions like, where do you source the meat for your chili?
So you can imagine Drayton's surprise when he turned to KOKLA and heard the latest Leatherface track blasting through the speakers and climbing up the charts.
Oh, Lefty's using Stretch and the tape to lure them out of hiding.
Exactly, and it worked. Only problem was that it happened earlier than Lefty had expected, and he wasn't there to help Stretch when Chop Top and Bubba arrived to get the tape and eliminate the threat. I've already said there's only ever been like 5 survivors to the Sawyer killings. Not including the truck driver that ran away never to be seen again because, well, we don't know what the fuck happened to him. Stretch is one of those survivors, so it's her account of events that we are going to be going on.
And was she more stable than Sally when they found her?
Oh yeah, Stretch was a tough woman. She was obviously traumatized by the experience, but after some time and good counselling, she got her life back on track. And I'm not sure what she's up to right now, but as of 2020, she was still working in radio.
Ah, fair play, Stretch.
So Stretch laid it out like this. She said it wasn't long after midnight, making it the 29th of August. Broadcasting for the station generally stopped at about 12 o'clock.
Okay.
And she was now waiting around to meet Lefty after playing the murder tape a few times that day.
Yeah.
Causing her a fuckload of grief because the radio complaint line was banging all day. LG, the radio engineer, tried once again, like he had done on many other occasions, to ask Stretch out for a drink after work, but knowing that she was kind of had her heart set and finished, solving this chainsaw shit, he just gave up pretty quick and took off.
Okay.
It wasn't long after that Stretch started hearing noises coming from the front desk, and she made her way down to the reception area. This was when she first met Chop Top. Stretch said he looked like a living cartoon, dressed in old tattered hippie-style clothes and wearing a Sonny Bono wig. His skin was grey and weathered looking, his teeth yellow and stained. He spoke with a kind of childlike excitement in his voice, frantic but controlled all at the same time. It's said as well that he had a tendency to repeat himself a lot, usually making declarations and big statements twice.
You said almost the same thing about Nubbins.
Well, they were twin brothers, so you'd have to imagine they would have a lot of similar traits. Plus, 90% of the time, he carried Nubbins' corpse around like it was a puppet and spoke to it. So you'd have to assume in his reality, his world, Nubbins was there with him in his head.
Yeah.
So maybe he took on his personality a bit after death. It's a trait we are going to see in the Sawyers a lot more next week's episode. But it is known the brothers would occasionally swap names or take on the names of dead family members to confuse victims and law enforcement. That way, if they had another Sally Hardesty incident, the names would never match the descriptions. The people the police thought were dead would seem to be alive again. Even the names I'm giving you today are presumed names. Names gathered through intense investigation. But with the Sawyers, nothing is concrete. The story keeps evolving and changing all the time. One thing I can probably say for sure though is the man that we call Chop Top was definitely Robert Sawyer. His army record and very obvious war scars made that an easy one to ID.
Okay.
Stretch clicked pretty quick and realised who it was she was dealing with. She did everything she could to lead Chop Top to the exit door, hoping deep down that Lefty would burst in guns blazing. But before she could get Chop Top out and the door locked, the familiar rev of a chainsaw took off. And out of the darkness, the monster known as Leatherface burst from a darkened room, swinging his blade wildly, trying to catch Stretch quickly and by surprise. Stretch reckons that the only thing to save her in that moment was that Bubba's chainsaw clipped Chop Top's head, hitting the metal plate and pushing the saw just out of range. Taking the only opportunity she was likely to have, Stretch took off back towards the broadcasting booth, locking herself in a storage room that was protected by a big steel door.
Chainsaw through that dickhead.
Thinking she was safe, for now at least, Stretch was briefly able to take a sigh of relief. But before she could let her mind settle back to reality, Leatherface came smashing through an old timber partition wall between the broadcasting booth and the storage room.
Oh shit, how is she going to survive this?
She survived, Bubba, because deep down, Bubba's not a monster or a beast. Bubba's just a human like the rest of us. A man. And a man's got needs.
Oh, yuck.
Yep. Before Bubba could mow Stretch down, he couldn't help but notice she was a lady. A beautiful lady. Bubba had a crush, and after a little inner conflict, decided to give Stretch a pass. She said that before Chop Top could come down to help, Bubba ran back to reception, grunting to confirm the kill when Chop Top asked.
Oh.
In the meantime, while all this was going on, someone else with a crush on Stretch had returned to the station. LG came back with coffee for Stretch and was attacked by Chop Top in the reception area. After Bubba returned to Chop Top, they took LG's body and left. Chop Top, thinking the evidence had been destroyed, and Leatherface, not really understanding any better, was blissfully unaware of the chain of events he had just set into motion by leaving Stretch alive. Within the next few hours, the Sawyers would finally be exposed and suffer their first but not last real defeat. Stretch, sick of waiting for Lefty and not willing to see the night be a waste, followed the brothers back to the theme park in her car.
The balls on Stretch.
When she got to the park, she parked outside, just far enough away not to draw attention, but close enough that if she needed to get out of there, she could get there quickly,
Yeah.
She started to investigate the area while trying to keep her eyes on the brothers' truck ahead of her. As she made her way along, she noticed more lights coming up behind her. But by the time she saw them, it was too late and she had to take off running. It was then the driver revealed himself to be Lefty. He had just been pulling into the radio station when he saw Stretch tearing off down the road. Worrying that he had been too late and guessing what was going on, Lefty followed her to the theme park location. And now it was time for him to clean house and get justice for his family.
Go on, Lefty.
Lefty, getting his chainsaws ready, told Stretch to go to the police and get to safety. But before Stretch could make another move, the floor beneath her collapsed and Stretch fell straight into the depths of hell.
Oh.
Part of the theme park was based underground. It had like a fake mining system kind of thing going on,
Yeah.
So that stretched all over the property. Part of the reason the brothers bought it in the first place was for this very reason.
Okay.
This place had been closed for fucking years. So a lot of the wooden tracks would have been like rotten at this stage. And the place was a death trap.
Yeah.
Another reason the Sawyers loved it.
Probably.
Lefty, absolutely furious and drowning in a deep rage, took the chainsaws he had bought earlier and started to cut down the boundaries around the park, making his way through the cave-like formations in the place where the family was residing and Stretch was trapped.
How do we know that? Like, as far as I can guess, Lefty probably isn't coming out of this at the other end alive.
Nah, but the police investigation notes detail the damage he did as he made his way in, around the caves and stuff.
Yeah, but did the police notes also have the details about his deep rage?
Alright, yeah. I was trying to be dramatic, a bit of, bit of drama to the story, but fucking ruined it now.
Cause of death. Drowned in a deep sea of rage. I suppose now you're going to tell me that you have no real evidence that the tunnel Stretch fell down led to the depths of hell either, no?
Wrong! How does the Sawyers meat locker sound when it comes to hell on Earth?
Yeah, I'll give you that one, alright.
So she literally went down a tunnel and landed bang smack in the worst place you could fucking end up, right?
Yeah.
She said when she hit the ground, she looked up and there was strips of human flesh hanging from hooks around her. Yeah. And she could see someone's legs coming up because she was kind of hidden behind a barrel, she said. But she could see someone's legs on the ground.
Yeah.
Didn't know who it was, just a dead body. She had to hide pretty quick because she said Leatherface came in, Bubba came in.
Okay.
And he pulled out, the carving knives they use, like for our parents use it like Christmas when they're doing the turkey and stuff. He had one of them and he started literally just sawing pieces off of his body.
Oh, yeah.
Now, he did what Leatherface was known for doing.
Yeah.
And he cut off this guy's face. And he was holding it up in the air, fucking admiring it. When Stretch kind of got startled and knocked something over, so he spotted her, came running over to her. She panicked because this psychotic fucking monster is again in front of her.
Yeah.
So he basically is trying to calm her down. Leatherface is mad about Stretch for whatever reason. And his idea to calm her down apparently was to take the face, the newly freshly cut face he had just gotten, and put it on hers.
Yuck.
So she said like she could feel the wetness of the blood. She was even saying it, if it's wet, don't put it on me, And then he put like a cowboy hat on her and started dancing with her.
Bizarre.
Like fucking waltzing around the meat locker with her.
That's
Drayton had actually sent Bubba to go do something, so he came looking for her. So Bubba like pushed her down and hit her again.
okay.
And then before he came out to help Drayton, he tied her up. She thought she was fucked.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
But the dead body in the ground, not so dead. Started moving. Got the
With
fuck
no
up.
face.
No face and strips gone from his side.
Ugh.
But she said even though it had no face, she recognised him. It was LG.
No shit. So
He wasn't killed by Chop Top.
alive.
He was fucking badly injured, but he was brought back. She said he literally, with his dying breath, picked up a butcher knife that was left behind by Bubba, and very close. It was dodgy, but he managed to cut her loose.
Okay.
And she said that was the last thing to do. After he cut her loose, he keeled over, hit the ground, and
Gone.
that was it.
Yeah.
She was nice enough though to give him back his face before she
Oh,
left.
well, at least now he can be identified.
Once Stretch was free, she took off aimlessly through the tunnels, trying to find an exit, but before she could get anywhere, Drayton and Chop Top spotted her, cornering her at a dead end in the mining tunnels. The brothers mocked Bubba for his crush and for leaving Stretch alive in their first encounter. Stretch said, like Sally, at this point terror took over and the brothers' ravings just came out muffled to her ears, her brain unable to comprehend the words being thrown at her. Wah, 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 wah. She said in this encounter, only one statement came through clear. One Drayton Sawyer quote that she could remember. She said, as they mocked Bubba for his crush, Drayton said, "It's natural. You want to know about sex eventually. Sex, well, who knows. But the Saw is family." Chop Top then struck Stretch with a large bone-like object, knocking her out cold, and again, just like Sally Hardesty, when she woke, she found herself bound to a chair made of bones, sitting in a dining room from hell.
So do you think they would have done this with every victim? I feel like it would be a bit time-consuming if they're trying to run a food business. Like, it'd be like having dinner with every cow, pig, or chicken in the slaughterhouse before you kill them.
They're getting their last meal before they walk the Green Mile.
Yeah, I'd rather skip it and go straight to the chair.
Fuck that. Just like in 73, the family ranted and raved at a terrified Stretch, reveling in her fear, almost feeding on it like an appetizer before she became the main course. And just like in 73, they decided to give the honour of the final kill shot to good old Grandpa Earl, now allegedly 38 years old. Now, if this man couldn't swing a fucking hammer right in 73 when he was the ripe old age of 124, then what chance did he have now? He got in one or two clean shots with the help and direction of the brothers. Then, to stop her squirming, Drayton took a quick shot, knocking Stretch out momentarily again.
So she didn't seize the day and jump through the nearest window like Sally.
Well, before she could, the familiar roar of a chainsaw broke up the dinner party. That's when Lefty came bursting in the room. He freed Stretch and told her to run. Then he cut Drayton right up the ass and broke into a sword-style chainsaw fight with Bubba. That was the last time Stretch or anyone else ever saw Lefty alive again. Because as Chop Top pursued her out a skylight door by ladder, they heard a boom.
A boom.
I'll explain later.
Okay.
Chop Top chased Stretch to the top of a stone tower in the amusement park. It was at the top of this tower Stretch found a room, a spooky shrine to the fallen Sawyers. The corpse of Earl's wife, the mysterious Grandma Sawyer, sitting on a throne of corpses surrounded by skeletal decor and chainsaw accessories. This is just a guess, but I am assuming this is the corpse of the woman Sally encountered in the bedroom back at the farmhouse. Do you remember Grandpa and the... The remains of Grandma held a small chainsaw in her hands, and Stretch desperately pulled at it to get it free so she could defend herself against Chop Top, who was now in a frenzy due to the witnessing of the desecration of his grandmother's resting place.
That's a nice wisdom to you, is that?
But Stretch had difficulty starting up the old chainsaw, and Chop Top took the opportunity to attack her with a straight razor, cutting her several times in the back, neck and shoulders, similar to that of what Nubbins had done to Sally just before he got run over by the semi-truck.
Yeah.
Just as he was about to go in for the kill shot, Stretch finally got the saw going and impaled him with it. Fatally wounded Chop Top then fell back off the ledge, hit the ground and fell back into the hole leading back into the underground cave he had chased her out of. Stretch sat for a while to calm down and collect herself. Then she descended the ladder back into the pit of hell that was the Sawyers' home and slaughterhouse, passing the bodies of Chop Top, Drayton and Lefty along the way. She said Lefty was ruined, like barely recognisable. She then made her way back to her truck and alerted authorities to the crime scene. This time, the cops had the exact location, the bodies, and the evidence. And for the first time ever, they had a living Sawyer in custody.
They caught Bubba.
Nope. That's where our title comes in for today's episode. Once again, the legendary monster known as Leatherface was missing. Now, only 2 eyewitness testimonies to his existence.
So, who did they catch?
Drayton Sawyer. Drayton had only been injured by Lefty with the chainsaw shot, and he'd caused the explosion throwing the grenade at Lefty out of desperation. Apparently, he said he was very lucky because he actually dropped the grenade before throwing it and barely got it away from himself before it blew up. That's why he took some of the blast, knocking him out and presumably making him appear dead to Bubba, who was now again missing along with Gramps.
So the cops had a Sawyer, but they didn't fully believe that it was Leatherface existed.
Pretty much. They believed it was just Drayton's alter ego that allowed him to kill. See, Drayton claimed that he was no killer, just a cook. The brothers took care of the dirty work and he just made food out of the meat they brought him. But cops weren't buying it. They hypothesized that both brothers were playing the parts of their dead siblings. Okay. Chop Top killed his nubbins, hence the weird corpse puppet he carried around, and Drayton wore the face of his victims to become Leatherface, a tactic to strike fear into his victims and allowing him to compartmentalize his killings. It was Bubba's fault, not his. He was only the cook and the meat was dead already when he got it.
And what about Stretch's testimony?
Cops believed her on everything bar the Leatherface part.
Okay.
They claimed that due to the severity of the trauma she was put through and the various blows to the head she received from the hammer, that she couldn't give them a solid timeline of where everyone was throughout the night. So in their eyes, that made it perfectly possible that Drayton was both himself and Bubba, and if that wasn't enough, they also thought that he was a man named Walter Edward Sawyer. That's the name Drayton had used on the deed for the gas station he had owned back in 1973.
Okay.
So that's the name he was going to go down as officially in court records. Police grilled Drayton for hours about Sally Hardesty, the whole 73 event, nubbins, the family history, the Leatherface persona, his crimes, his victims, everything.
Let me guess, the old prick gave him nothing.
No, not nothing. He gave them bits and pieces. He gave them enough for them to be able to stitch together a rough idea of what had been going on around the back roads of Texas.
Okay.
Most days it was vague. And being a Sawyer, he couldn't help but fuck with the cops and try and confuse the situation. Some days, Leatherface was a make-believe boogeyman. The next, he would be a real monster coming to get revenge for Drayton and threatening the families of the cops. Sometimes, he'd agree with them and he'd just say he probably was Leatherface. You never knew what to believe.
Yeah.
But the clues we do have from him are as follows. When asked about Pamela Willard, Drayton replied, "She sure did look good hanging there by that hook." Being that the Sawyers modelled themselves on slaughterhouse butchers, we can only assume that meant they hung her body from a meat hook. When asked about Kirk Wyasan, what's it again?
Wiseman is what I'd say.
Okay, we'll go with that. He laughed and said, "Well, that boy took a knock to the head and shook so much he could have been a lady's vibrator." When asked about Jerry Huberman, Drayton got sour and said, "Well, the big dummy, he ruined the head. The boy wore glasses. The eyes were wrecked. We had to go without pate that night."
Yeah.
No idea what the pate thing is about. But cops reckon in the two guys' case that they were slaughtered like animals used to be back before machines took over the industry.
Okay.
Back then in the slaughterhouse, workers simply whacked the animals over the head with a sledgehammer to kill them. Because he was complaining about the glasses, my only guess is that when the hammer hit Jerry, it broke his glasses and got the tiny shards of glass in his eyes and face, and it wasn't edible for the Sawyers anymore.
Picky eaters, were they? Did he tell him about what happened to Franklin? I know we know, but the family didn't know at the time.
There was no need. They found Franklin's skeletal remains inside the tunnels of the theme park.
They brought him with them when they left.
Well, yeah, they brought everything with them when they left, remember? No bodies, no bones, no evidence, no crime. It's why they were only known as an urban legend between 1973 and 1986.
Okay.
So they spent 2 years grilling Drayton for information on cold places, the rest of his family and Bubba, aka Leatherface. Finally they gave up and decided to take him to court. They had a mountain of bodies from the theme park and they didn't really need anything else. He'd get the death penalty for fucking sure after the events of 1986 alone. And finally the Texas Chainsaw Massacre could be put to bed. So, on August 18th, 1989, the 16th anniversary of the Hardesty incident, W.E. Sawyer, aka Drayton Sawyer, aka Leatherface, presumed, not proved, was put to death for his crimes, dying in the gas chamber at the age of 69. His last meal was barbecue, and when asked if he had any last words, Drayton said, "You think you got him, don't you? You think I'm the one they call Leatherface? Well, hey, Bubba, you ain't seen nothing yet."
Ooh.
And boy, he was not wrong. So now I'm going to preface this with a little disclaimer. As I said last week, the Sawyers were not the social number type, and the family was off the grid for generations at this point. So all the information here is stitched together from a lot of second and third hand sources, stories told by locals who knew them as the strange family in the community. So I can't stand by all this being fact. A lot of this is my own interpretation of the information put in front of me. And shit, if I'm to be honest, some of it is my own theory on what might have been going on in this conspiracy.
Okay, so it's an informed opinion.
Yeah. Like that's a good way of putting it.
Thank you.
So Earl Sawyer was allegedly born in 1849 in the rural area of New Muerto in Hunt County, Texas. Absolutely nothing is known about Earl's early life, except that when he came of age, he began working in the local slaughterhouse. Local legend says that Earl's skills at killing and butchering cattle were unmatched, and he could put down a cow with one swift whack of a sledgehammer. At some point before the turn of the century, Earl met and married a woman only known as Luda Mae Hewitt, name presumed, not proven. And together they had their first and only child, a daughter named Anne Sawyer, in 1907.
Okay.
Now again, that name I'm not 100% sure on. It was the only thing I could find online. It's the best I could do, so that's what we're going with, Luda Mae.
Luda Mae.
I know it doesn't make for a great story either, but unfortunately, again, not much is known of Anne's early life, due to it being the early 1900s and the Sawyers staying well off the grid.
Okay.
What we do know about Anne, though, is she will go on to sire 7, maybe 8 boys herself in the future. The first of those being Drayton Sawyer in 1920, when Anne was only 12 years old.
That is disgusting. The poor girl didn't stand a chance. Or who's the father?
Just like everything to do with the Sawyers, the answer will disgust you. It's believed that while giving birth to Anne, there were complications, leaving Luda Mae unable to have any more children. Actually, that's putting it lightly. Luda Mae worked on the meatpacking section at a slaughterhouse. That's how she had met Earl. The story that goes round is the boss in the slaughterhouse was a slave driver, and maternity leave wasn't really a thing. So at 9 months pregnant, Luda Mae was still working 12-hour days. One day, she just keeled over, began to bleed from below, and an emergency birth was performed right there in the slaughterhouse.
Jesus.
Obviously not the most hygienic location for a birth, and it was a messy birth. Luda Mae was lucky to survive, but untreated infection later was the cause of her infertility going forward.
I bet they had the right tools, though.
Disgusting, Aimee. This was unacceptable to Earl, as he wanted a big family full of boys to help him start his own farm and slaughtering business. The way he saw it, Anne caused the damage, so Anne would have to step in as a replacement. All the better because she was young, meaning she would be fertile for years to come, allowing him to spread his seed for generations to come, and that is exactly what he did.
That is nasty.
to say the least. As soon as Anne's first period rolled around, she had her father on top of her. Only 11 years old and at that time, and 9 months later she gave birth to Drayton, her first son, but due to the age difference they felt more like brother and sister. This was a scandal at the time. Although they were off the grid, they were still part of the small Newtonworth community. Earl, still a respected worker in the slaughterhouse, and in a small area like that, everybody knows everyone else's business. It was known that after Anne's birth, Luda May was left infertile, yet here, 12 years later, is another Sawyer child. Obviously, they tried to play it off as a miracle baby that Luda May was blessed with. But in reality, the town people knew the truth, and Earl's reputation was severely damaged. Locals say Luda May was mortified and became a shut-in, and that's where her backstory ends. She wouldn't be seen again until her body was recovered from Texas Battleland in 1986.
Jesus.
After Drayton, it would be 25 more years before another Sawyer child was born. My guess is Luda May must have died in the first half of the 1940s. I'm thinking the embarrassment of Drayton's birth caused her to put her foot down and probably kept Earl in line for a while. But as soon as she was gone, he was right back at it with Anne, now 38 years old.
So was the 11-year-old rape a once-off, or do you think he continued to abuse her afterwards and just made sure that she didn't get pregnant?
No, look at who we're talking about here. It's the Sawyers. I have no proof, but I'll bet the house on it that he never stopped abusing that girl.
Yeah.
It was around the time that Anne became pregnant with twins Nubbins and Robert that the slaughterhouse changed with the times and began to use more humane ways to slaughter the animals. This enraged Earl, who enjoyed his job way too much if you ask the locals, and feared the rise of automation in the workplace, causing him to quit and take his son Drayton with him. Drayton had begun working there in 1933 when he was only 13 years old.
He was young.
This, according to Drayton, was known as the family shame, and with no work and a growing family to feed, the Sawyers slipped into poverty and into depression. That's when the idea of cannibalism entered Earl's head. According to a cellmate of Drayton Sawyer, it said that when Drayton was asked why the Sawyers began eating people, he said the idea came from Earl, who had at some point been in the army. Do not ask me which war. If the man's age is to be believed, it could have been the end of the fucking American Civil War for all we knew.
So he had to eat people in the army.
Okay, the story goes that Earl and his unit were trapped in a foxhole, blocked by the enemy, and reinforcements were a few days away. Rations were scarce, and once they ran low, the unit resigned themselves to the fact that to stay alive, they'd have to start eating each other. So every few days, straws were drawn and one unlucky soul was sacrificed for the good of the unit.
Holy God. I thought that their death rate would be like one a day, so you wouldn't have to kill anybody.
Well, they were well hidden, well locked in. They just couldn't get any help, you know. They would have starved to death before they would have been shot. So Earl was no stranger to the taste of human flesh, and being that he had already wasn't exactly an upstanding and decent human being a pedo and all that, what came next was no big stretch for him. Their first suspected victim was the slaughterhouse manager where the Sawyers had worked for years. The manager, whose name I can't find anywhere, I've searched everywhere but it just won't come up for me, went missing not long after Earl's exit from the factory. The Sawyers were long suspected of his disappearance, but it could never be proven and went down as a cold case. The slaughterhouse eventually shut its doors due to dwindling population and by proxy dwindling farms, cattle and workers, and before long the once quiet industrial suburb of rural Texas became a ghost town, filled with only dilapidated farmhouses and an empty slaughterhouse and an old filling station. Due to the dwindling population and their reclusivity, little is known about the Sawyers pre-1973, but it is said that the area around their farmhouse became kind of like a Bermuda Triangle of Texas. Travellers who ventured through the area regularly went missing with no trace ever found of them again.
And no one found that suspicious. Like they didn't think to go investigate the only family left living in the area.
We're talking about post-war America up until the 80s. No social media, no internet, no phones. Missing adults were often chalked up as runaways who wanted to cut ties with their past and start fresh. Now, as I said, over the years, Anne and Earl had 6 to 7 children together. They are as follows. Drayton Sawyer, first child, born 1920. Nubbins and Robert Chop Top Sawyer, second and third children, twins, born 1945. Presumed but not proven, Bubba Leatherface Sawyer, supposed fourth child, born 1947. Alfredo Sawyer, fifth child, born 1948. Tinker Sawyer, aka W.E. Slaughter, sixth child, born 1949. Edward Tex Sawyer, seventh child, born 1958. And Wilmer Sawyer, eighth and last child of Anne and Earl, born 1969.
Where do you think they found the name Alfredo?
I wondered the exact same thing.
Do they have Italian ancestry?
I don't know about that, but you want to know why Wilmer was the last child?
Oh, okay.
So Anne, sick of having her now extremely old and decrepit father on top of her, decided to take it upon herself to sterilize Earl and, well, castrate Earl and sterilize herself. I don't know exactly how she did it, but it happened with Michelle, what's her name? I can't remember. She was the third survivor, where she said, and basically said something about burning down there.
Oh, clothes hanger.
Yeah, something along those lines. And basically she made it clear that she had sterilised herself and grandfather.
Cauterised her tubes, basically, her by herself.
But after she did that, somebody else took over building the family line, but we'll get to that a little later as well.
So, like, what's the deal with Bubba? You've been dancing around it since last week's episode. Like, is he a real person or not?
Just a little more patience before I get into the conspiracy angle. I want to tell you the story of Michelle Shatnell, that was the name I was looking for, and Benny Forey, who from 1990. Then we'll get into Wilmer and JD and the whole fucked up experiment that might or might not be taking place.
Hurry up.
So, it's the summer of 1990 and teenager Michelle Shatnell and her boyfriend Ryan, both 18, are driving cross country from California to Florida to return a borrowed car to a family member. The trip had been relatively uneventful, but as they got close to Dallas, they noticed the traffic began to pile up. They later found out that the traffic jam was the result of an excavation that was taking place up ahead. You see, the police had unearthed a body pit, a mass grave holding anywhere up to 70 bodies. And this wasn't the first one either. A few months earlier, a similar mass grave was discovered in Donny Tray with another 30 bodies recovered. That's in and around 100 dead for those of you keeping count. Yes, it's safe to say the Sawyer boys were at it again, and in a big, big way. So taking a little detour, Michelle and Ryan found themselves at a rural rest stop in the middle of nowhere, Texas. The Last Chance gas station. A gas station the owner inherited from his brother. That owner being Alfredo Sawyer, brother of former owner Drayton Sawyer. It's here they also met a hitchhiker known as Tex.
Edward Tex Sawyer, yeah?
I can't get nothing past you. So, basically what happened here was they stopped for gas. Tex and Alfredo are there. Tex is kind of playing like he is just a drifter.
Okay.
He's looking for a lift. He, not a Sawyer. Doesn't give him the name Sawyer, just gives him the name Tex.
Yeah.
Michelle obviously needs to use the bathroom. They've been driving for a while. Yep. She asks Alfredo where the bathroom is. He's filling up the car. She goes into the bathroom. No, while she's in the bathroom, Alfredo sneaks back into his shop front, where he has a little peephole, and he starts peeping through to watch Michelle go pee-pee and poo-poo. Tex catches him in the act and tells Michelle and gets into a bit of a scuffle with Alfredo. Alfredo comes running out of the shop of the gas station with a gun in hand, shotgun in hand, and starts freaking out. Tex tells the couple to get back in the car. He had already given Ryan some directions, telling him it was a fucking shortcut to where they wanted to get to. Michelle and Ryan raced down the road, right down the route Tex had laid out for them. But in the process of the getaway, Ryan claims to have seen Alfredo shoot down Tex. But before they could process that, Alfredo got one shot off on them, blowing out their back window as they sped away.
So the Sawyers are back at their original stomping grounds. If Drayton's old filling station is close by, then so is the old Sawyer farmhouse. And not to interrupt the story, but where the fuck were these Sawyers between 1973 and 1990?
Yeah, they were back in the original area, but not at the same house. They were a few miles down the road.
Okay. Well, they didn't think the people of the area would start to look into them once travellers started to go get reported missing again.
Obviously not, but I'll explain a little later why that might be. As far as where the rest of the Sawyer clan was up until this point, well, you have to remember these were desperate, poverty-stricken people who felt they had no choice but to hunt to survive. That's no excuse for their actions. I mean, they could have hunted animals like man had been doing since the dawn of time, but on top of being desperate, the Sawyers were not good people to start with. They were inbred animals sired by a psychopath. They were feral wolves that hunted in packs, and the Sawyers' home territory was running dry long ago, only allowing them to pick up scraps of food when the odd traveller was unfortunate enough to take a wrong turn into their area. The family of 10 knew to survive they needed to divide and conquer, split the group to cover more ground. So it was decided the more mentally challenged brothers would stay put with Drayton at the homestead, fearing they would draw too much attention, a fear proven correct in 1986 when Chop Top and Bubba were left get too close to Dallas. Anne would take Alfredo and Tinker on the road with Tex and Wilmer, hitting the back roads, squatting in abandoned houses along the way, hunting, the two older Sawyers teaching their younger brothers the family trade in the process.
Okay.
The couple drove down the darkened road for miles, surely at this point far enough away from the crazy Alfredo to relax and compose themselves. What they didn't know, though, was not long after they took off, another Sawyer was hot in their tail, and as they drove along the rural road, the bright headlights of a pickup truck blinded them. It picked up speed, clipping at them from behind. Then just as it was about to pass the couple by, bang! A coyote carcass smashed through their windscreen, causing them to swerve to a stop, puncturing their tyre in the process. Now, they had to pull over in this situation. Do you think you could manage this, pulling over in this situation?
No.
This is your second encounter with a psycho Sawyer in the same area.
Did they have to pull over?
Oh, the tyre's fucked. I mean, once the tyre goes, you have to. There's no if, buts, or maybes about it. You're just going to destroy the wheel. I mean, they could have, but it would have been fucked and they would have gotten caught down the line anyway.
Yeah,
so anyway, it looked like the pickup truck was gone.
Okay.
So they pulled over and they start, it's dark. No phones back in this time, so it's just the normal flashlight, and Michelle is holding a flashlight for Ryan, trying to get this done as quick as he fucking possibly can. But she said she could hear something coming in the background, and it was all black. It was just dark. It's a rural back roads. It's like around where we live here.
Yeah.
If we go for a walk down a road here in the night, it's fucking pitch black.
Yeah.
So they couldn't see a thing. And apparently Michelle was saying afterwards that Ryan was complaining because she kept taking the light off, but she kept hearing something, so she kept looking up to see.
As you would.
And he just got the lug nuts on, but they weren't tightened, and they heard the old familiar roar of
get in and go. I don't care what the lug nuts are like. Get
fucking
in and
saw go, and
fucking
it's
go.
Leatherface. Leatherface attacks. They freak out. They try to get into the car. He's fucking hacking at them. Michelle claims, I don't know how we managed it, this is hulking strength here, that he was holding on to the back of the car when they tried to drive off and literally ripped the trunk off of the back of the car as they drove away.
Hannah, are we talking about the thing at the bottom of the trunk that comes off if you get caught in a footpath?
The door,
Or oh, I thought you meant half the car away.
No, literally the door of the trunk off, ripped it off as they were driving off.
Okay.
But they got away, okay?
Yeah.
So, but as they're getting away, obviously in a panic, they're turning the corner, there's this other car coming at them, and they crash into it. Well, they don't crash into it. They kind of fucking swerve off the road and they see it and crash off into a ditch.
Okay.
But the guy in the car, he's good enough to stop. His name was Benny Forey. He was a retired soldier and a survivalist on his way back from a camping trip with his militia-style buddies. When so he crashed into Michelle and knocking them from the road and into a nearby brush. He got the couple free from their car only to discover the terrifying details that led to their encounter. So now, he is listening to these two, and they're Michelle's kind of all of it, and Ryan is ranting and fucking raving. There's this madman with a fucking chainsaw after us. His brother had a gun, he was shooting at us, he's losing his mind. He said, we're being hunted. Benny, whose truck was still up on the road, he ran up there to see if he could get any help. Well, Benny believed him. It's not like he didn't believe him. Benny was tooled up. He was going up to his truck to get some weapons.
The way I'd see it was, I'd have no choice but to believe them. I'm not going to believe them in America in pitch black.
So Benny heads up, and when he gets to the main road, he sees that there are flares along the road.
Okay.
Like the cops do when there's an accident. They put down flares so people can see and they can get around them. But at the end of this row of flares, he meets Tinker Sawyer.
No.
Who is the guy who was in the truck that ran the couple off the road to start with. Now Tinker is playing up like he just saw that they were in a bit of trouble, and he's got a truck with a winch on it, and he'll get them out, no hassle and all this shit. Benny's a little smarter than that, and Benny kind of, he's talking to him. He realizes something's weird here. He knew, that the kids had already told them, they were being chased down. So Benny said, all right, I just got to get something from the car. Goes over, starts loading up his fucking gun, his machine gun.
Yeah.
Before he could get it loaded, Tinker, also knowing what was going on, charged at him in the car. Fucking knocking Benny's car off the fucking road and barely missing Benny.
Oh, I thought it was bye.
So Benny knows off in the woods as well, away from Michelle and Ryan at this point.
Okay, so they're all trying to get away.
If Benny didn't realise the trouble he was in yet, he was soon about to find out, because after being forced back into the wooded wilderness by Tinker, Benny stumbled across a girl. I say stumbled across, but Leatherface was actively hunting Michelle, Ryan and Benny. He was about to catch up with Benny when this mystery girl caused a distraction, sending Bubba, not Benny, off in the wrong direction. Benny is one of the 5 survivors we spoke about in the last episode. Yeah. Himself and Michelle live to tell the tale, so I'll be switching between their stories as we go along.
Okay.
Now, Benny at this point had seen Leatherface, so he knew he was around the place, Benny and the girl, who Benny said was named Sarah, got talking, and in their brief encounter, Benny learned that Sarah's whole family had been released into the woods and hunted down by the Sawyer family. She was the last surviving member, having watched her sister being murdered just earlier that day. Oh. When Benny inquired as to why she didn't head for the road and leave, she explained that the family watched the roads, leading people from the roads into their sick little hunting ground.
Yikes.
Now, assuming that the mass grave sites in Donny Train outside Dallas was the work of the Sawyers, it would be safe to say that they had plenty of practice hunting and knew the wooded area like the back of their hands. Because of this, it didn't take long for Leatherface to hunt down and kill Sarah and Ryan, taking Ryan home to the family farm to be dressed and butchered for dinner. Ryan actually got caught in a bear trap. The whole woods was booby-trapped, near impossible to escape.
Smart.
Once it was clear that Ryan was fucked, Michelle took off running, finding the Sawyer farmhouse, and just like Sally Hardesty, made the mistake of not questioning just who might live inside there in the area inhabited by cannibalistic psychopaths. No, she went inside, right? And went straight up the stairs, as they all seem to do in these situations. I don't know why they go up the stairs to hide.
You're cornering yourself.
But she went upstairs and she went into a room and she found a little girl, reckoned to be about 12.
Okay.
The little girl was sitting there having a tea party with a little doll that she called Sally Hardesty.
Oh.
There was bones and skeleton, like skulls and bones around the room, and she had toys made out of these bones. She looked like a pristine little child, according to Michelle. Again, Michelle, only person in the world to have ever seen this child. The child was real friendly with her, real nice with her. They got talking. She was going to try and get the kid out of there. Next thing she knows, the child stabs her with a piece of fucking sharpened bone right in the leg. Yeah. She stumbles backwards right into the arms of Tex, the hitchhiker she thought had been killed earlier that day.
Okay.
Yep. So now she realises she is well and truly fucked. Just like Sally and Stretch before her, Michelle found herself bound to a chair in a kitchen dining room at the Sawyer home.
The kitchen dining room must have had to downsize after the whole chili business scandal of 86.
Yeah, business was slow. They couldn't afford to have the 2 separate rooms anymore. It was all compact.
Can't imagine.
After Anne appears, Michelle begs for help but is ignored. A man that Michelle said went by Tinker appeared at the doorway, dragging the badly injured but not dead Ryan, whom he and Tex proceeded to suspend upside down by the ankles with a pair of meat hooks.
What? Like hooks through the ankles?
Yep.
Fuck.
If that's not enough, after they hooked Ryan up, Tex took 2 large nails and used them to make sure Michelle wouldn't be able to go anywhere. They had learned from their brother's mistakes, and their girl wouldn't get away. He drove the nails through each of her hands, sticking her to the wooden chair she was already bound to by rope, then gagged her to keep her quiet. Now, the kitchen scene this time went a little bit different from the last few times. Grandpa was there.
Okay.
Apparently still alive at this stage. They're claiming he was alive at this stage.
But, okay.
I don't know who's claiming. Michelle's claiming he was alive at this stage. No one else is claiming he was alive at this
I'm not
stage.
disputing anybody's claim he's alive.
It was definitely his body.
He was actually freaking alive.
Because they reckon it's the body that was brought with Leatherface from Texas Battleland. So he's sitting there, Anne is sitting there, and Tinker and Tex are in there. Mm-hmm. Tinker apparently fucking they were going on like fucking, the way they talked about Leatherface was like he was like an angry teenager. And he had grown his hair out as well. He had long hair at this point.
Okay.
And they were like, you know, he'd been cranky and bitchy around the place. So Tex had bought him a new chainsaw.
Yeah.
Michelle said this thing was huge.
Okay.
But across it, I don't know if you remember in the last episode, I said Drayton Sawyer once said, the saw is family. Yeah. And that's what they had engraved on the side of this new chainsaw.
Fancy. Saw
is family. So this was a present for Leatherface. Bubba.
Make me not want to use the chainsaw if they got it engraved for me.
No, it didn't buy him much love for very long. Because apparently at this time as well, Bubba has started getting into music.
Yeah.
So he'd be walking around with his headphones. Well, Michelle said he was walking around with headphones on that day. Okay. And
does she know what he was listening to?
She didn't say. No, she was terrified. She was fucking after getting her hands nailed into a fucking chair. So she said that she saw him getting into an argument with Tinker, and Tinker threw his Walkman into the oven, and then Bubba grabbed Tinker and stuck his face in the fucking oven. And then when Tex kind of got involved, he took his head out and put his hand in and forced him to pick up the.
Right, you fucking saw little shit.
He's good hand too, because Tex had a hook on the other hand.
Did he?
Yeah. So it was his good hand that he made him do it with.
Do we know what happened?
But no, there's no maybe. Quick and easy dinner. Couldn't get to the shops one day. Anyway, so like I said, Ryan was hanging upside down here. This dude wasn't dead yet.
Okay.
And this is where the real fucked up part comes in. Okay. Because again, like we said, we don't really know a whole pile about this Babby situation, this Babby Sawyer, this 12-year-old girl. Yeah. But Michelle said she came in and Leatherface was the one being real fatherly to her. She came over to Leatherface, kissed him on the cheek, and then went over and joked with or actually started to scold her two maybe supposed uncles. Okay. That it was her turn, that they had promised that she could do the next one.
Ooh.
So they agreed that her being 12 years old, she was old enough to do the next one. Next one being finishing off Ryan. And they had this machine set up, so the sledgehammer was now like hooked up on the roof. Yeah. And basically there was a lever and you released it, and the sledgehammer would just swing down, and the way Ryan was hung upside down, it would land right in his head. So
kind of like a slaughterhouse kind of
exactly.
Mechanism.
Well, again, that's what the fucking Sawyers did like. Yeah. So it was Babby, Beth, killed Ryan in the end by pulling the lever.
Go away.
Well, that's what Michelle claims. Again, we have no evidence that this little child even exists.
Shit, being killed by 12-year-old.
So while all this was going on inside, Benny was still outside, surveying the land. He came across Alfredo disposing of body parts in the swampy grounds around the farm. Benny said they had a brief confrontation, and then Benny knocked him hard in the head, knocking him into the swamp. Benny was pretty sure Alfredo was dead from that crack.
Bye-bye, Alfredo, you creep.
Benny made his way up to the farm as the chaos inside continued. Unknown to the family inside, Benny was tooling up, and once he was locked and loaded, he let loose on the house, putting holes in Tinker and killing Anne, and finally officially putting an end to the corpse of Earl Sawyer, blowing it to fucking pieces.
So did he die in 86 then? Like, this was just his corpse they had in the room. Like, they kept Nubbins and Grandma Sawyer corpses.
Maybe, maybe not. Michelle swears she saw blood come from him when he was hit. But it's a traumatic and chaotic experience, and memories aren't always the most reliable sources. Now, I will add as well that Bubba had a bit of an attachment to his mother, so he was not overly thrilled at the death of Mama Sawyer. Once the shooting stopped and while everyone was down, Michelle sucked it up and ripped her hands from the nails that held her in place. She stabbed Tex to get past him and ran to join Benny, Leatherface hot in her heels, as Tex stayed behind to deal with Benny. As they fought by Tinker's truck, Benny noticed that the fuel tank of the truck was leaking, pushing Tex into the line of fire as they struggled back and forth. Now, something I left out a little earlier was when Benny met Sarah, the girl in the woods, Benny wanted a cigarette. And he had no light, but Sarah had a lighter, so she gave him the light and he lit up the cigarette. Now, Sarah, I think because of her family being killed, had kind of resigned herself to, she was going with him, you know. And she told him he could keep the lighter.
Okay. He burned Tex with the lighter.
Exactly.
Karma.
Every time they were in the fight, every time they got close, he pushed him further into the oil as it was pouring out.
Yeah.
And then before, you know, Tex realised what was going on, it was too late, and Benny just lit up through the lighter and Tex went up in flames.
Crap.
So with Tex down, Benny raced to help Michelle, who was still running through the booby-trapped woods, stalked by the monster Leatherface. Benny said he got there just in time and out of pure instinct tackled Bubba, knocking him into a bog and saving Michelle in the process. Benny went with him, causing Michelle to believe he was also dead. She took off back to the main road, the sun beginning to rise and the nightmare appearing to be over. As she sat by an abandoned tyre, she got a fright as she saw Alfredo's truck pull up in front of her, but was relieved to see it was only Benny, who had managed to free himself from the bog and was ready to spin them the fuck out of there. But before they could celebrate their survival, Alfredo did attack, trying to grab Benny, who managed to dodge him, allowing Michelle a clear shot with a shotgun to the chest, killing Alfredo once and for all. As they rushed off in Alfredo's truck, they swore they could see the hulking image of Leatherface come out of the brush to grab his brother's body to bring it home again. But again, investigation into the incident went nowhere. Earl, Anne and Tex's bodies were found on the farm. Alfredo was found shot on the road, again putting the existence of Leatherface in question since both the survivors claimed to see him move Alfredo's body. And again, no sign of Bubba, Tinker or Babby. Babby never to be heard of again, but I have my own theories that we will get into again a little later.
Ooh.
Originally, the police wanted to say it was a copycat situation, but DNA evidence proved the familiar link between Alfredo, Tex and Anne to that of Drayton, Nubbins and Chop Top. They also found evidence on the farm to link them of the body pits, now attributing over 100 murders to the savage Sawyer clan. I pointed out in the last episode that sometimes the brothers swapped names or took the names of dead relatives in order to confuse survivors and cops. Sometimes they did it though because they had no choice. And APB was out for Tinker Sawyer, with a pretty good description of him to go along with it. He was out alone with Bubba again in hiding and going by Walter Edwards Slaughter. He lost weight and simplified his look to make him blend in a bit better. He also replaced his hook with a prosthetic hand.
Okay.
The Sawyer clan was shrinking and he only had one more line of defence. The youngest of the Sawyer clan, Wilmer Sawyer. But like Drayton had to stay low and wait while Chop Top finished his tour of service, Tinker and Bubba would have to stay low for 4 years while Wilmer completed his time in the armed forces. His time wasn't quite like Chop Top's. See, Wilmer didn't see a whole lot of what you would call conventional action. No, you see, once the army realised the young man's lineage, he got assigned to a special group, an experimental unit, or as Wilmer taught, a super soldier sleeper program.
Is this the MK Ultra crazy conspiracy part of the story?
Sure is. Want to tell him about it?
Yep. So, in the 1950s, the US government was really scared of communism. The newly created CIA at the time was tasked with making sure their country stayed good and capitalist, while also researching ways to repel communism overseas. A lot of research was put into mind control to try and understand a few things more fully, among them the possibility that someone could be turned into a double agent without knowing it. This idea was investigated as a way to both identify communists operating here in the US and also as a possible method to infiltrate the Soviet Union with homeland spies, people born and raised as Soviets but secretly and possibly unknowingly working for the USA. This program, named MKUltra, used a lot of questionable techniques as forms of research, including dosing unwilling subjects with hallucinogenic drugs, forcing them into unnatural and dangerous social settings to gauge their reactions, subjecting them to sensory deprivation and isolation, as well as things we now recognise as flat-out torture.
All of which Wilmer Sawyer was subjected to. I mean, as if it wasn't bad enough he had Sawyer genes, but now he's been mind-fucked into even deeper psychosis by the US government and trained how to do all this as well. You see, Wilmer, like, they put him through all the LSD experiments, all the weird fucking social situations and all that. But because of his family history and because of the way he had been brought up, they thought that maybe using him to put other people in those sort of situations, he would be the guy that put him in the situation rather than being in the situation. The only problem is they'd fucked Wilmer up way too much to have him doing what they had him doing.
Okay.
So when Wilmer got home, they took up residence again right outside Dallas. As I said earlier, we're down to the last of the Sawyers. Tinker, aka W.E., Wilmer and Bubba, plus Babby, who was missing, believed to have never existed by officials. So I explained the Babby situation already. The only person to say she was there is Michelle Shatner. She's the only person that have seen this girl. Nobody else has seen this girl. Benny didn't see this girl. He was never really in the fucking house to see the girl.
Okay.
She is the only person that has interacted with Babby and knows about her and can describe her. But again, I have a little bit more on that a little later once we're finished with Wilmer's story. Okay. Again, I'd preface this next section by saying none of this is proven. Okay. There are no bodies. There is no evidence. This is identical to the 73 Hardesty incident. As far as the records go, the 1990 attacks were the last Sawyer attacks or appearance. All we have is the testimony of one surviving witness and the missing person reports of 4 teens, 1 unknown and 3 friends of the survivor, Jenny. Okay. Even when it comes to Jenny, very little is known. Her case file is marked classified, and after a brief stint of interviews with the media cataloguing what happened to her, a smear campaign was launched against her and she eventually disappeared into history. Some say she was kidnapped and killed. Some say she ran away to start fresh, away from the ugly media attacks. Some say she was reprogrammed and rehomed somewhere far away, but the truth is we don't know.
What? Like, why do they treat her like that? Survivors have spoken out before. Like, why take such a different approach with Jenny?
But this is how they dealt with it in the past. The Sally Hardesty incident was nearly identical and probably would have went down the same way if Catatonia didn't keep her quiet and eventually eliminate her from the equation. Yeah. Remember, for fucking 13 years after the Sally Hardesty incident, they pretended like nothing happened. Yeah. They pretend every time something weird happened in the back roads of Texas, they ignored it. They put it down to accidents, mistakes, you know, just missing people just running away. So I mean, this is, I would say, the 1990 incident and the Stretch incident will be the ones that are the anomalies, the ones that stand out. The thing about the 1986 thing is Stretch got to the local police first, who got to the incident first, which made it harder to cover up. Yeah. And then Drayton had to take the fall for that because they had been caught. The 1990 incident, you're talking about the same thing. Michelle got to the fucking local police before anybody could come in to clean up the mess. Now, someone obviously did clean up some of the mess because Babby went missing. Bubba went missing. Yeah. But Texas body was found, obviously, so they weren't quick enough, you know? Yeah. And in this situation, it seems like the Sally Hardesty incident, there was time to clean up and get everybody out of there. Yeah. Yeah? Yeah. So Jenny claims this. On May 22nd, 1994, Jenny and her 3 friends, Barry, Heather and Sean, were set to attend their school's prom. Heather, her friend, discovered her boyfriend Barry cheating on her with another girl and she stormed out of the dance, followed closely by Barry, who tries to explain himself in the car as they drive away, as guys do after they get Their argument is interrupted by Jenny and Sean, who are hiding in the back seat smoking that sweet, sweet Mary Jane. Heather takes a detour off the freeway, but while distracted collides with another motorist. The teen driver of the car climbs out of the wreck only to pass out in the ensuing confusion. Jenny, along with Heather and Barry, leave Sean to look after the unconscious motorist while they search for help.
Okay.
So they stop off in an office trailer where they meet Darla, an insurance agent who promises to call her brother, a tow truck driver by the name of Wilmer.
Ooh.
They leave the office.
Her boyfriend.
Yeah.
Okay.
They leave the office and begin heading back towards the wreck, only for Heather and Barry to become separated from Jenny in the darkness. Jenny claims she was soon picked up by Wilmer, who claimed to be on his way to help the friends. Now, she is in the truck with Wilmer. And she's slow to get in at first because obviously, strange man in the truck, but he said, look, I went to collect your friends, I'm going to bring you back, to safety and all that. She jumps in with him. Once she gets in with him, he starts telling her why she was right to be cautious, and you don't know what kind of psychopaths are out in this road, and this kind of goes on and on and on, and then she's getting more and more nervous and realising, oh shit, I'm in a bad situation, this guy's a psychopath, and then he insists that she looks out the back window of his pickup truck. When she looks out, she sees her boyfriend Sean and the motorist who was left behind dead in the back. Sean covered in tire marks, like I had been ripped up, so it looked like Wilmer had ran him the fuck over a few times. Jenny, freaking out, jumped from the still moving truck and ran back to the office of Darla. I don't know why the fuck she did that, considering fucking Wilmer was her boyfriend, but that's where she went. No, again, there's more to Jenny than there seems, so we'll get into that.
Okay.
But Wilmer had called ahead, and when Jenny returned to the office, she was ambushed by W.E., or the man I believe to be Tinker. A gunny sack was thrown over her head, and she was stuffed into the trunk of Darla's car. Now, Darla we don't know a whole pile about her. She, again, like everybody else in the 1996 incident, went fucking missing once this was all over. All we know is what Jenny has said about her, and it seemed like she was very mentally unstable. Like, this sounded like a woman who had broken out of a mental asylum. She was all over the place. Sometimes she referred to Wilmer as her husband. Sometimes it was her boyfriend and she was going back to her husband. Okay. She was talking about them having a chip in her head, and that if she didn't do as they said, they were going to blow her head up and all this kind of shit. She was paranoid out of her head, and apparently had a really violent relationship with Wilmer. They'd argue and push and hit at each other. Like, at one point Wilmer was choking her inside in the kitchen, and it took Jenny to point a gun at him to stop him from choking her. And then they were having sex with each other 2 seconds later.
Bizarre.
But I'll get to the gun thing in a minute as well, because that was kind of cool. Yeah, so that's Darla. So we don't really know a whole pile about her, bar that she's just a little crazy.
And why are you so convinced that W.E. is Tinker?
Well, look, Tinker went missing after the 1990 situation. He wasn't found again. And when I look at the descriptions of Tinker and W.E., they both had very similar hair lengths, similar kind of facial hair. The only real difference between the two of them was a bit of weight in the name, and obviously he changed his style a little bit. Yeah. W.E. is known as the name that was used on the deed for the gas station that Drayton had bought, and it's the name he had died under. W. Slaughter, we actually joked, was the name tag they had on the overalls at the gas station. So I reckon he took that name to hide his identity, because obviously, like I said, local cops got there before whoever was cleaning up the Sawyers mess. The local cops got there first, so Tinker his name would have been said to the cops by Michelle. They would have gotten a good description of Tinker from Michelle. Okay. I reckon this is just him paying homage to his brother and using this name and this joke name that they like to use, because they were all going by Slaughter at this point. Wilmer was Slaughter as well. They knew the Sawyer name was Dirt at this point, so this was their way of hiding it. Not a very good fucking way of hiding it, but they're all psychopaths, so it is what it is. Once they got back to the house, Jenny discovered Heather alive but badly injured and barely conscious. She had been impaled in the back.
Seeing as it's the Sawyers, I bet anything she was hung up or the meat hook.
Probably. Jenny said Wilmer ranted and raved about the government, the Illuminati, and quote, the voices, eyes and ears in the walls.
Oh.
Apparently he had some issues with his legs as well, and he had fashioned these almost like robotic leg braces that he controlled using like old Universal TV remote controls.
Fuck, this story is way stranger and wilder than the last few Sawyer crimes.
See, that's why you can see why some people don't really believe it, you know, but again, we'll get into it. So while this kind of was fucking up his knee braces, and at the same time he was arguing with Darla.
Yeah.
And he pinned Darla up against the wall, like I said, and he was choking her. And I mean, like, choking her out.
Okay.
Did he ever have her up against the wall, or he had her on the ground with his foot in her throat? That was it. And he had the machine, you know, the robotic leg, so the extra pressure going down. And she was, you know, going purple.
Yeah.
He didn't realise that he'd left his gun down. Jenny picked it up and pointed it at him and started to threaten him.
Okay.
Fucking Wilmer was a cool customer. He didn't give a fuck. He basically took the barrel of the gun, put it to his head, and said, "Go right ahead." But it did make him take his foot off of Darla's neck.
Okay.
So Jenny took a shot. Didn't go off. Nothing happened. There was nothing in it. He grabbed the gun. He shot it again. A bullet went off. So it was one bullet away. So it was just luck.
Okay. Yeah. Where's Bubba through all this?
Bubba, yeah, I suppose we haven't spoken a whole pile about Bubba since then. See, this is the thing about Jenny's tale. As you said yourself, this is all a bit mental, a bit over the top. The reason Jenny's story was so hard to believe was although it held similarities to the other Sawyer attacks, there were enough small changes and what was seen as embellishments that it was easy to dismiss as a hoax, despite the 4 missing teens again.
Okay.
One of the major discrepancies was the description of Leatherface. All other survivors describe Bubba as a hulking monster who growled like a bear and squealed like an angry pig. He was vicious, bloodthirsty, and showed little to no emotion. Although never the alpha of the clan, he was always the go-to heavy, but not this time. Jenny described a cross-dressing, shrill-voiced, emotional mess of a man, or at this point, possibly a woman. Bubba appeared to be transitioning, and in the process, the once unstoppable killer seemed frailer, tamer, almost like a beaten dog, flinching at every move of his more dominant and controlling younger brothers.
What might cause the change in Bubba?
Well, see, I have a theory. Now, like I said, Bubba was very attached to his mother.
Yeah.
No, but again, Bubba always had some little bits of femininity in him. I mean, we heard Sally Hardesty say, even from the very get-go, that he caked his face in makeup for special occasions.
Yeah.
But in this case, I believe that it seemed like there was a hierarchy in the Sawyer family. You know, you went up the ladder as they died, you know?
Yeah.
Because even by the time the 1990 incidents were coming around, Leatherface or Bubba seemed to be above his younger brothers at that point. He still wasn't making plans because he wasn't smart enough to do it, but he had a bit of control in the family. He was seen as a little bit more of the alpha. I think that when Anne was killed, it fucking crushed him.
Okay.
And then I think he decided to take it upon himself to take her position in the family.
Yeah.
I think that's when he started to become more feminine, where he decided he was going to be the matriarch of the Sawyer family, especially when you had Wilmer coming back in, who was a fucking huge personality.
Yeah.
You know, who was going to fill the room, who was dominant. Wilmer, even though he was the youngest, would have been in charge of that family, even if all the Sawyers were still alive.
Yeah.
Do you know? Yeah. The best way to describe it is, you know, we watch Kin. I don't know if people know what Kin is. It's an Irish crime drama. Really, really fucking good. But it would be like Viking and his dad. Do you know? Whereas the smart one who knows what they're doing, and the fucking absolute lunatic who just wants to. He thinks he knows what he's going to do, and he's going to walk in and take charge, and that's what Wilmer would. Wilmer be like Viking.
Okay.
So I reckon that he was just having some mommy issues, and I think as well, you know, age was starting to play a part. I mean, he's in his 50s at this point. He's been through a lot. He's watched his brothers being killed. He's mentally has to be getting destroyed as time goes by as well. You know, getting worse and worse and worse and worse,
definitely.
and deeper into that. And then on top of that, he's now hanging out with fucking Wilmer, who could have him on anything. This man could be, you know, tripping on LSD every fucking day and acid every day. That's what was part of the MK Ultra, just to build on the experience that they were trying to create.
Okay.
So I mean, you know, there's some of my theories as to why Bubba might have started to go in that direction.
Okay.
So far, there's been no mention of eating any humans. In fact, before Darla returned to the farm with Jenny, she stopped and bought a stack of pizzas to bring home. Descriptions are dodgy and the story is similar to before, but with a little more crazy zany shit thrown in. All we're missing now is dinner, and we're just getting to that now.
Okay.
Jenny said she was held in place by WE. I'm just going to call him WE because that's what he would call himself at the time.
Okay.
At the dinner table. She was joined by the corpses of the family who previously occupied the house before it was commandeered by Wilmer. Heather sat beside her, still alive but barely holding on. The usual torture ensued, with the family bragging about being part of a special Illuminati-sanctioned project.
What?
No idea. No, when I say they were torturing as well, I mean, like, they didn't lay a hand on Jenny.
Okay.
I mean, Wilmer might have backhanded her once or twice, but there was no actual, like, you know, near-death violence.
Yeah.
They set Heather on fire right in front of her. Not fire, but, like, you know, lighter fluid on her back, and then threw a lighter, and then, you know, fucking she ran into a wall screaming, and then I think Jenny said Darla put her out with a fucking fire extinguisher. So, I mean, and that's another weird side to this, because the Sawyers wouldn't have given a fuck.
No.
Well, Darla wasn't really a Sawyer, so I don't know. It's just a strange situation. So while the family reveal that they are employed by a secret society to terrorise people that may cross their path, a sophisticated-looking man named Oni Rotman arrived unexpectedly. He appeared to be the employer Wilmer was speaking about, and reprimanded Wilmer for his methods.
For his methods?
Yeah, he didn't like the way he was doing things, or he was making the experience.
Okay.
So again, this links back to this MK Ultra thing where we were talking about these situational experiences, put people under severe pressure and see how they react and all this. But I also have another theory on that, and I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
After Rotman leaves, Wilmer flies into a rage, slashing himself with a razor and killing Heather by crushing her skull under his cybernetic leg, before knocking WE unconscious with a hammer by accident. His robot leg malfunctioned, causing him to jolt. WE was just unlucky enough to be in the way of the hammer he was holding.
Oh, shit.
Jenny said she used a distraction to escape, running like Sally Hardesty into the morning daylight, pursued again like Sally by Leatherface and his psychotic brother. She said she made it to the road where she flagged down a couple in a camper van. When they saw the chainsaw-wielding monster chasing her, they stopped just long enough to let her in. But before they could make a getaway, Wilmer crashed into the RV with his truck, knocking it on its side. Jenny said she again took off running with Wilmer and Bubba now chasing her down the open road. So a bit I left out, right? That brings in more of the secret society weird Illuminati shit. When Rotman arrived at the house, he kind of tried to calm Jenny.
Okay.
Keep her relaxed. And he said, this isn't the way I wanted this done. This isn't the right way. You're not doing it right. He then unbuttoned his shirt to reveal a load of these like weird kind of scarification kind of designs on his chest and piercings across his stomach.
Across the stomach?
Yeah.
Okay.
He then walked over and licked Jenny's face.
Okay.
And left.
Okay.
Left, but he kind of again reprimanded Wilmer on the way out. Now, as Wilmer was chasing down Jenny on the road and Leatherface behind him, a little plane, like one of these small one or two man plane, flew past.
Okay.
And then turned around, flew again and got low and clipped Wilmer right in the top of the head.
Oh.
Killing him on the spot. Leatherface didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Bubba was shocked, standing there just staring.
Of course you would be.
And a limo pulls up. Jenny gets into the limo and Rotman is inside in the limo. And he again says, this isn't the way we wanted this to go down. It wasn't the right way for this to happen.
Okay.
And asked her, did she want to go to the police? Did she want to go to the hospital? He'd bring her wherever.
Okay.
And he did, and she went and she explained everything to the police.
Yeah.
No, we talked about the Illuminati, right? Or the MK Ultra, not the Illuminati, the MK Ultra project.
Yeah.
And we were saying about sleeper programs, and we were talking about these social situations to be put in, and we were talking about, you know, just in general, like the mind control and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is my own theory, so I want that to be, this is an editorial, this is not fact. I have a theory because Babby was born on the exact same year as Jenny. And there is no real record of Jenny before the age of 12. That when whoever was dealing with whatever was going on with the Sawyers, I think that everything that happened from 1976 to 1973 to 1986, that was the Sawyers being the Sawyers.
Okay.
I think MK Ultra came into it when they saw Wilmer and Chop Top and all this stuff. Well, no, after Chop Top, I suppose. Chop Top. When they saw Wilmer in there.
Okay.
And they started to realise there was more Sawyers there.
Yeah.
I think that's when MK Ultra came in. I think after the 1990 stuff happened, they came in, they swooped in, and they started to take control. Whoever this secret society was. And I think Babby was taken and reprogrammed and rehomed.
Yeah.
I think that the possibility is that she might be Jenny. Because Jenny was never harmed throughout this whole experience. And Rotman made it clear to her that this isn't the way he wanted to do it. It isn't the way. I think they were seeing if she could be, if she was a sleeper agent, if this would wake her back up again. If being back in the situation around Sawyers again would wake up that thing, or if it had worked. Okay. I mean, was she going to be an effective sleeper agent for him going forward, or had they brainwashed her enough and put her back into society that she was no longer a Sawyer at heart?
Yeah.
And that's what he meant by this was a failure, it was a fuck up, and at this point they were putting an end to the Sawyers. I believe the reason we didn't hear about Leatherface again, or Tinker again, or Darla again, is because Rotman had someone go in there, clean the whole fucking place up, and all of them were eliminated.
Gone. Okay.
So that's my crazy theory on the Sawyers. Do you have any other questions?
I just have one. Is Bubba real or a persona made up by the brothers?
I believe he was a real person. I think there is the possibility. I mean, they played up on it. I mean, that he does slightly change appearance, but most of the time he's always kind of described the same way. The size-wise, especially, being big, being bulky, heavy, kind of, but not fat, like, you know, just fucking heavy set, heavy built. Okay. Kind of farmer, you know, like the kind of Mice and Men, Lenny, and fucking the bigger, you know, the big dude, like, you know, and that's the way he was always described outside of the fourth encounter in 1996. So I believe that Bubba is a real person. He's a real person. I think he is a genuine real person. He's popped up too many times, but I think the Sawyers did a very good job of protecting him. I think he might have been a pet. You know, because he's the simpler one. I think he might have been the baby, because I did hear as well, like, that Michelle and Jenny both claimed that he wasn't really called Bubba much around him. They'd heard him referred to as Bubba, but Junior was a lot of what they called him. But that was weird because he's older than all of them, and he wasn't. There was no Bubba Senior. So I think they might have just seen him because of his mentality as being the kind of the kid brother of the family, and kind of took care of him and made sure that as soon as shit went down, Bubba was the first one out of there. Plus, it kind of suited them to have this scare tactic, this monster to take care of business for them, like, and to have their legend live on, but still keep them away from the limelight.
Yeah. And when you say they disappeared in 1996, but what about the attack in Harlow? In Texas last year, like, that was supposed to be a massacre with up to 50 people hacked to death by what looks like to be Leatherface.
That was a hoax, a bullshit attempt to go viral as a marketing campaign to show investors for a new ghost town Halloween theme park attraction. So, like, they were playing up like it was going to be this influencer heaven kind of place where there'd be no violence. But that was the part of the marketing strategy. And then while all these influencers were there in the no violence zone, Leatherface, who was supposed to be from the area, came out and hacked them all to fucking pieces. Obviously, the people of Texas were not too happy with this.
Well, I understand that.
So the reaction, I mean, like, again, you have to remember, people knew about Leatherface because of the 2003 movie with Jessica Biel. I mean, look, it was a fine movie, but they left out so much story. It's all just a gore fest. They changed their names because, again, the Texans weren't too mad about being directly linked to but everybody knew what it was about. It was called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so I mean,
everybody knew.
But they changed the name to the Hewitts. I think they were using Luda May's name, and, you know, there was Les Brothers. The dinner scene wasn't happening. The old decrepit grandfather wasn't happening. So they cleaned it up for fucking for movie. But the reaction was so bad from the 2022 new viral video thing that they tried, that the influencers in question were cancelled, like super cancelled. Not a word has been heard from them since that viral video. I searched all over the web and they have practically erased themselves from being online.
Or did someone else erase them and maybe Leatherface still haunts the back roads of Texas?
Oh, now you're getting it. So in the end, are there more Sawyers out there? Another generation ready to feed the story of Leatherface? Or was this just a government experiment gone wrong? An embarrassment to the elite and a secret set to die and fade into history? Does Leatherface still stalk rural Texas? Or has he been exterminated along with Tinker and Babby after the shit show that was 1996? Unfortunately for us, we may never know, but we can wait and we can see. And just like Lefty all those years before, we might get lucky and finally get another shot at justice and closure on the story of the killer cannibal clan.
Ooh.
If you like that, then listen to our main show every Wednesday on all good podcast providers. It's Alive, the really, really fake true crime horror podcast. All the guts and gore, none of the guilt. See you on Wednesdays.